Hello, and welcome to another episode of the House of Auger. I am your host, the man of the house, JT Auger, and with me tonight are my co-hosts Joel and Nicole, Piva, Adam, and perhaps other Adam, Amanda, and Jesus, I have a lot of fucking hosts.
Yeah.
But you know what? We need a lot of hosts in order to make it work. So, for those of you who are new, thank you for joining us tonight. And if you didn't, well, fuck you. If you're listening to this and you weren't here when it was live, you can go fuck yourself. But thank you also for listening to the recording, but still fuck yourself. So this is a open panel roundtable discussion is how we usually do this when we don't have a guest, which is often. When we choose not to have a guest, I should say. It's our choice. Okay, it's a choice. Quick disclaimer: this is not a family-friendly show. We curse. We talk about a lot of horrendous adult topics, and if you are easily offended or a child, please leave. No, seriously, get the fuck out. Also, the way this works is if you would like to join us on one of our topics, as far as join the discussion, let us know in chat and we will unmute you and you can tell us what you think about whatever it is we're talking about. If you have a topic that you would like to throw in the mix, once in a while, depending on the topic, we'll go ahead and consider that, and we'll throw that in, and maybe we'll talk about what you want to talk about. But most of the time, we're selfish, and we like to talk about what we want to talk about. And by selfish, by we, I mean me, mostly. So, also, tonight, unlike, well, last week we were supposed to do a tattoo thing, kind of extravaganza. We were going to talk about tattoos. We didn't, so we're going to do that this time because we're going to end up talking about body modification at some point. But I wanted to start things off by saying, if you have tattoos or body modification for that matter, and you would like to share with us what you have, please feel free to post pictures of your tattoos or body modifications in chat, and we will talk about you and your body live. Isn't that fun? I mean, I assume that's why you have them, so that you can show them off.
You're obviously just like begging for attention. You know, that's the only reason.
Really, that's all it is. And you should be ashamed of yourself.
And like we will, I mean, be ashamed of yourself, but like we're also going to give you the attention that you're begging for. So it could be worse. It could be worse.
But you should also like take a torch and burn off the. No, I'm just kidding. Don't.
No, that's branding. No, that's a completely different modification. Get your shit straight.
Yeah, and if you have brands, then show those as well. Post those in chat as well.
Adam, could you maybe shame us a little bit also while we're shaming ourselves?
And if you feel the need to carve into yourself at this very moment during the show, that'd be even better. Like, go ahead and just like body mod yourself live, and then take pictures. We'll be sure to talk about that for about 30 seconds. So, where shall we start? We have quite a few. We have a list of topics tonight. Some are. Well, you know what I'd like to talk about first? I'd like to talk about Jussie Smollett, because everyone's talking about Jussie Smollett, and I figure we might as well.
Josh, hold on a second. I know Christy Kratz can't stay for very long. Yeah, she's on Butterfly Kiss. I saw her down there.
Okay.
So, there she is. And she wanted to get in on the pug thing. So if we wanted to do the pug thing real quick, if that was a real topic, I don't know if it was or not.
Yeah, it's a real topic. Fuck yeah, let's talk about these goddamn pugs. Okay. We will talk about pugs and why. The way I listed this topic is pugs, science gone wrong. A case for genocide.
A case for genocide, question mark. That's the discussion. Should we genocide all the pugs?
No, this isn't going to be a discussion. This is just
there's only one correct answer.
There's only
it's a lecture. It's not a discussion.
You're going to make a case. There's going to be some people in here. I'm not going to name names who are going to try and defend pugs and their existence, and of course they're wrong. But we're going to hear them out, even though at the end of the day they're still wrong. But go ahead. So here's my reason. First, let me make the case for why I think pugs are wrong. They're still, first of all, little dogs are bad because they're little to begin with. But these things look like...
I will dispute you on that.
I know.
Right.
For the most part, I'm going to say...
Let's move on to the broader point you're trying to make.
Like, I love Italian Greyhounds, and they're tiny, but they're not... I mean, they're big on... They're on the larger side of smaller dogs. There's really no excuse for Chihuahuas or pugs. They're sampler dogs, really. They should be given out as there should be a bin in front of every pet store full of these things. And when a child says, "Hey, Mom, Dad, can I get a dog?" you should be able to grab one out of the bin, take it home with you, hand it to your kid, and say, "Keep that thing alive for 3 to 4 weeks. And if it's still alive at the end of that time frame, then we'll think about getting you a real dog, like an actual dog." Pugs, from what I understand, are the product of, I don't know how many hundreds of years of breeding, like purposeful breeding.
Purebred.
Yeah.
Just like most purebreds.
Yeah, most purebreds are, designed to have, or bred to have certain traits, and over the course of...
ironic that they're called purebreds, but they've been inbred. The term just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you intentionally bred them to this. That's not pure in any sense of the imagination. Yeah. You are a liar in that respect. So pugs smell.
They don't.
They do. They smell. They fart all the time. Yes, they do. They smell. They fart.
How many pugs?
And their eye. What? Excuse me.
How many pugs have you actually been around?
I've been around a couple.
I don't.
So do you, JT. No, I shower. I don't smell. You know what I do smell? I smell amazing. Pugs do not smell amazing. When you smell a pug, it smells like ass.
Every dog, after they go outside, especially in hot weather, are a little stinky for a bit, but they don't particularly smell bad. They smell fine.
No, pugs are the worst. Pugs are the worst.
Cephalic dogs be prone.
Let me tell you something.
Breathing problems, but they don't all have.
I actually stopped dating a girl, though she doesn't know this, because of her pug.
Oh my God.
I swear to God. I swear to fucking God. So here's the thing. She had this pug. God, she's in group too? I'm not going to say nothing.
Oh, shit.
So she's a sweetheart of a girl. Anyway, she had this pug. The pug, as far as personality-wise, was nice. It's not like it was an angry dog. A little skittish, a little needy. But they tend to have medical problems. Like, she'd have to take it in to get its eye. Its eye! Like, pug's eyes just will naturally pop the fuck out of their head. Like, oops.
That's not true. That's not true. That is not as common as you think at all.
But the fact that it happens...
No, but it does
here's the thing,
happen.
though. Like, in virtually all pugs, their eyes are too big for their eye sockets. And it's constantly just squeezing on them. And it's honestly just, like, disturbing.
And to be fair, that's not
it's
just
disturbing
pugs.
enough that their eyes are buggy little bug eyes in the first place. Okay?
Augie.
Don't look at me with your fucking little bug eyes. It's weird and it's gross and you smell and you're skittish and you fucking, oh God.
You
And
were around
so-
a pug that had, sounds like every problem that they can have. But my God, every single breed is prone to certain problems. That's not
Yeah.
guaranteed
So
that every
needy.
dog will have these
So
problems.
fucking needy. On top of that, this thing farted constantly. On top of that, she'd want to be intimate, and this thing, like, it was used to sleeping with her in bed. So
Yeah.
if I'd come over to her place, she didn't make any effort until I seemed to have an issue with it to try and put the pug out of the room. She was perfectly fine.
When y'all were having sex?
No, Sativa, I can't hear you. Can anybody else hear?
No.
No.
Oh, God damn it.
Oh, there you
All
go.
right.
There you go.
Oh, cool.
Now I
There
hear
she
you.
is.
No, I was actually going to say while we were still on the topic of the eye thing, so that may be an issue with pugs, but they are not the only breed. That's another issue along with the breathing problems that has a much higher occurrence in brachycephalic dogs.
Yep.
Because I actually have a Shih Tzu who is now the
fancy
one-eyed
word
wonder
for
nut.
small.
It's a fancy word for flat
Snub
face.
nose. Yeah,
Yes,
snub nose.
flat-nosed dogs have a lot of breathing problems, and
Yes,
part of that
and
is,
the
like,
eye
I mean,
thing.
dogs just aren't made to have that short of a respiratory
Right.
tract. Like,
And yeah, and see with the eyes, like that's not just a pug thing because Shih Tzus are another brachycephalic breed who are, and I literally have a Shih Tzu who one day she was trucking through the yard and then boop, there went her eyeball out of her fucking head.
here's the interesting
It
thing.
was the
though.
weirdest shit ever.
Here's the interesting
No
thing.
shit, she wasn't even doing anything.
Pugs were not always this flat-faced.
Mhm.
Let's see.
Like,
You
Well, and if you
fucking
look at
people are playing God, and it's disturbing as fuck
it
because
is.
you are okay with the fact that these things have been bred to purposefully to look and be however you want. Oh, this is what I think is cute. I don't give a fuck if
That's
it
it.
causes,
Yeah,
causes
and like
this little
pugs
thing
didn't
to
have this
be
flat of a face all the time.
right.
Like, I mean, I
No.
posted in chat this picture.
yeah.
Like, this is a
normal.
painting of a pug, and it obviously has like a longer snout than modern day
Yeah.
pugs. And like, this dog is cute. That's fine. But like, there's nothing
you
cute
couldn't
about
handle
health
that.
problems. It's just disturbing. It's gross. I don't like it.
Well, and I mean in literally
We're going to
any
fucking, like,
specific
this is-
breed.
it's stuff like this.
Well, stuff that like deviates from the
makes a
normal
good
quote,
art-
like
oh
quote
my
unquote like
God.
normal
Oh
dog
my-
anatomy is going to have a lot more inbreeding,
Mhm.
and pugs especially.
And that's the
That's not
issue.
right.
Yeah,
It's
that's the
not
that's the
just
issue
little
is
dogs.
lack of genetic diversity, and
Yeah.
that's part of the reason. Like, part of the reason is like, okay, they're bred to basically have bodies that they're not supposed to have, and part of it is just
Oh,
they're
so that you can
inbred.
go, oh, they're so cute, and they fit
No,
in my
there was
purse.
there was a study
Fucking
that like
psychos.
of the 10, there's like 10,000 pugs in the UK, and they have the genetic diversity of 50 individuals. 50 out of 10,000.
You
These are some of the most
people.
inbred animals on the planet. Like,
Mhm.
that, there's nothing cute about this. I don't. I'm not comfortable
You know
with it. I
what?
don't know.
You know what it reminds me
objectively
of?
wrong. So
It reminds me of. It's kind of like plantation owners who would purposefully breed certain slaves together so that they could get a certain look or design. Like, oh yeah, I like those things together. So you people are wrong for doing this.
Yeah,
You
it's
and your
just gross. Like,
ancestors
I'm so
have-
uncomfortable
You're
with it.
going to, I'm telling you, you better hope. For those of you that are atheists, you better hope you're right. Because you're gonna answer for this shit when you go upstairs. If there's a God, he's gonna be like, hey.
Like,
You know,
for
that's
me,
pretty
it's
fucked up,
like,
right?
it's not that like, oh, it's not that I'm like judgmental on other people's dogs, you know. It's more that I love dogs too much to be comfortable with,
that's such
you know,
horseshit.
deliberate inbreeding.
Horseshit.
Okay, it's like
Every fucking it is.
inbred
Every
dogs
fucking
should
pure
make you
breed
uncomfortable.
has their own
Okay,
problems.
this should make any sane person uncomfortable. Okay, and if it
Well,
doesn't, that's a problem on you. That's not a problem with me.
No. No, I've had multiple different pure breed and mixed breed dogs, and they have all had like, okay, my lab him an arthritis because they're fucking prone to that, and it was awful. and my miniature Schnauzer had skin issues. And he actually did smell horrible because of his allergies and skin issues. My mixed breed dogs, one of them had Cushing's syndrome and was horribly ill from that. I mean, it's hit or miss with every animal you get. But every purebred dog is going to be more likely to have problems, especially genetic problems, because there's been shit tons of inbreeding with every fucking breed to achieve this perfect little breed standard, which is fucked up.
It really is. It really is. And this isn't specifically about pugs. It's just pugs are kind of like one of the worst examples of it.
For it. Yeah.
You know what? I mean, I know that slavery's wrong and all, but my daddy owned some and my granddaddy owned some, and it's just the way we do things. And like, it's a bummer, but like, what are you gonna do? You people, you're fucked up, and your dogs are representative of the blackness in your hearts.
Fuck you.
And the emptiness in your souls. That's
Chris says, I'm not racist, I had a black dog.
You're going to hell.
No,
and
yeah,
your
like,
little dog too.
The interesting thing, like that. So I was in anticipation for this topic. I, being the good host that I am, I did some research, and I was actually kind of surprised that, despite them being like more prone to a lot of health problems that a lot of other dogs just don't deal with, they're one of the things that's not affected, surprisingly, is their lifespan. Like, it's very much on par with other small dogs.
Yeah,
which is very interesting. It's just most of their life is miserable because of these problems. But they do live long enough, so you win some, you lose some.
I want a clip of just that, of fucking Nicole going, yep, that's right. No, that's not true. Like, she turned on a dime, man. She's so quick.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. Just playing God, you dirty, empty soulless.
I mean, there's an entire website devoted to this. Pugproblems.com. Like, does any other breed, or do that many other breeds have entire websites devoted to their health problems? Like,
yes.
Seriously, like, I mean,
there's a whole book.
Yeah, seriously.
There's a whole book called "The Problem with Pugs," and there's it's got 300 pages, and only one page has any words on it. And it's first page, and it says it's a pug, and the rest of it's empty. That's all the problem there is.
Pretty much every breed has a page devoted to their specific problems because they all fucking have problems.
You know what? Look, we're not the only ones. But we're not the only ones who engage in slavery. Okay. First of all, what about those guys? They do it too, and it's not like these are the only slaves in the world. Seriously, you guys are plantation owners, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. You're monsters.
You're such a dick.
Where'd Joe go? He popped up for a minute ago. That poor shit, and it sounded like he was actually going to say some shit.
Now we can't connect with our iPad and computer, so we're having to use just my phone right now. So it's
him yelling in the background saying "fuck y'all."
Yeah, I did try to talk, but fucking Adam over here just talking right over me.
Hey, you watch your whore mouth, Joel.
You know what? Adam deserves to be able to talk for those poor pugs who can't speak for themselves.
Exactly.
Okay?
I'm doing
maybe they could if they had a bigger snout.
You know, you ought to think about which side you're on, which side of history you guys are on, because guess who's on Adam's team?
Me.
Jesus.
Hey,
no, I lied.
I may not be all wholesome and good like Adam is, but I'm a freaking Christian too. Screw y'all.
You're nowhere near as wholesome, ma'am. It's not charming on you, okay?
I may not be as wholesome and good as Adam, but Jesus doesn't care.
Adam, were there pugs in the Bible?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
I rest my case.
Oh my god.
Oh
That's
my
it.
god.
Next topic.
I'm next.
Dude, pit mommies are worse than pugs.
I kind of
Yeah.
pits and
Well,
pit
yeah,
mommies.
the worst thing,
So-
yeah, pits are
Crazy
kind
ass
of their
pit
own
mommies.
thing. Pugs are like,
Yeah, everyone
Yeah.
says pit mommies are worse.
yeah, pits
Yeah.
is not just the
English Bull
dogs.
Terrier people
it's
are their
the
whole own
owners.
category.
Yeah. There's some wonderful people out there who own pits as well, but then there's
There aren't
But
though. There
when
aren't.
they send
not
their
true.
owners, they are not sending their best. Some I assume are
Huh.
good people,
Yeah.
but they are not sending their best.
That was beautiful.
Too.
The only people that ever actually attempt to dox me, yeah, pit owners are psycho, dude. Like, if you even say something slightly against pits, they will flip their shit.
Yeah.
And it's the same rhetoric
Well,
all the time.
I mean, because they want to
Not all
treat
pits.
pit bulls like all dogs are the same, and they're not. Like, I mean, we just established, like, the entire
they're
reason
not.
pugs exist the way they are is because people bred them to have certain characteristics. Now,
And
you know, people breed
and see,
dogs to have certain
pit
physical
bulls-
characteristics. Why not breed them to have certain behavioral
Behavioral.
characteristics? That's
Yep.
Correct.
totally reasonable. But pit mommies are like, no, mine is the exception. Okay, great. Like, good for you, honestly, because if yours wasn't the exception, that would be pretty terrible for you
Right.
and your children.
but just
like,
because
yeah,
yours is the
they're just,
exception
like,
doesn't
all
mean the
in
rest of them
denial
don't need to
that-
be put to sleep.
that the idea that, like, certain breeds have different characteristics is, like, they're in denial of that, and that's just it's so
There's something
bizarre.
wrong with calling yourself a pit mommy. I
Yeah,
agree.
That's like if
I
was
agree, pony girl.
that pugs have no health problems. Having a freaking Labrador. Of course, they're prone to health problems, and I have to be careful that during the summer my dogs don't get overheated because of how they are. But I'm not in denial, but y'all are still wrong.
Like,
Jack,
another
I'm
one.
not gonna,
Jack
I'm
is
not
getting-
going to say
going into territory that we probably should not go into. So let's just cut
That
that off
I-
right now.
but I kind of agree with you. But I earlier today put some statistics up that if you replaced a certain demographic with pit, it would still maintain, it would still fit,
Oh,
and it's a
God.
problem.
No,
Yeah,
that's
it's a problem.
BS. Because, like,
Pit bulls. Listen,
pit
there's
bulls were
just no
purposely
saving them.
bred to have these characteristics. That's not the same thing as any human demographics. That's not at all comparable.
There's actually, I was speaking to a, or I was listening to a trainer talk about pit bulls, and he explained the reason why there's so many people who say, like, all of a sudden it just changed. It usually when they attack, it comes as a surprise. It's not something that typically is expected. They're usually like surprised, like it was friendly, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And apparently, that's something to do with their approach to things. They've been bred to react a certain way, where they deal with it's how they attack other animals. It's a attack.
It is the
method.
veracity with which they do this. I can actually speak to that for a second because we had an issue. My husband had a pit bull, and I had a
Right.
Lhasa Apso. And long story short, fucking dumb shit on my husband and brother-in-law's part because I told them to keep them separated. They didn't. My brother-in-law brought his pits over to our house, who were two females in heat, with an unfixed male pit and an unfixed male Lhasa Apso. Nobody listened to me about keep that shit separate. So
Right.
the long and the short of it is they did not realize by the time everything was said and done, because it happened when we weren't there, they did not know that was my Lhasa Apso. They did not
Oh.
know that it was my Lhasa Apso that they found bits and pieces of until they found his collar. And it was 2 weeks
Oh.
before we found his jawbone.
God.
Ugh.
All
That's
dogs are
horrible.
capable of
It's-
this, but pit bulls
Right.
specifically, because of their muscular structure and skull structure, are capable of doing phenomenal fucking damage. when they
Right.
are inclined to do so. Now, I'm usually on board with not all pits are bastards, but some of every breed are awful fucking dogs.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a
The
fucking
way
fact.
that the way they like to attack it typically is they don't present in a standard way the normal what's the word I'm looking for? The like the normal things that you would expect from a dog, the baring of the teeth, growling, hair
It's
standing up,
0 to 100 real
stuff
fast.
like that. Like
Yeah.
all of those warning signs, they don't do that. They will hide all of that so as to not alarm the animal that they're going to attack. And so typically when attacks happen to humans, the same thing. There's often the story of like, yeah, it was looking at me like it was smiling. It was, I was petting it, and the next thing I knew, it was chewing out my throat. Like, just this is how they operate. It's pretty scary. And I mean, there's an argument to be made that it's not the breed, it's how you train them. Because I guess there's plenty of pits that don't. They go their whole lives without an attack, and I guess if you train them right and you have a loving home, but there's too many attacks that happen from
behavioral scientist will say that it's a mix of nature and nurture.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Like it's always been both, and like the general population is they always want to put it on one or the other. People, like the people that say like, oh, it's not the breed, it's how you raise it. Well, no, it's both.
Well, and there are so many good animal trainers out there, and I think that part of it on the nurture side is people walk into these, and there's a number of breeds that are like this, but people walk into these breeds of very intelligent but very stubborn dogs, thinking, oh, it's fine, he's just a pet, I don't need to train him. And most people do not know how to actually handle their animals.
Yeah.
They just don't. And this applies to small and large breeds, but particularly with something like Pit Bulls and German Shepherds are the first two that come to mind in terms of these are dogs that you need to know how to train this animal. And the resources are out there. So I think I think that some of these incidents could be limited. And I think another thing too is people with fucking little dogs who will let their little dogs run off lead and go all goddamn crazy. And people don't teach their kids how to fucking deal with animals. Like people think, oh, it's cute, he's pulling his tail. That's not fucking cute. Stop that motherfucker. Stop your kid from doing that shit,
Right.
Hey, real quick.
Cameron.
Josh, hold on a second. We're 30 minutes in already, and we're still on dogs, so we may want to start thinking about switching over to something else.
Yeah, we have a lot of topics.
I don't think I've made my point clear, though, just how wrong all of you are.
I think
how disturbing and disgusting your dogs are.
Blah, blah,
no, I'm just kidding. Cameron, I know we want to move on, but Cameron did ask quite a few minutes ago if he could jump in, and the whole point of the show is to allow people to come in and give their 2 cents. So, Cameron, you should be unmuted.
I wanted to say that I bred my dog for fighting. And I had a pug one time, and I smashed his face in the Tupperware to shape his face like that.
I love the accent. My dog. Is he from New York?
I don't know.
What's up, buddy? Is that really all you wanted to say?
Oh no, I wanted to get on for like the other. When are you guys talking about panties?
We'll get to that. Be patient. He's just like, yeah, just text me when you do.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna sit through this show unless you're talking about the good stuff.
That's true. I mean, it's all good stuff. God damn it. Well, it can be. Although, this is turning out to be a better show already than we were just not. We were all half asleep last show or something. So if you've joined us this week, despite the trials and tribulations of last week, we thank you. Welcome back. We hope you enjoy this roller coaster ride that we're that we have planned for you and everyone tonight. So now that we've talked about pugs, and you know what, they can be cute. I'll concede that they can be cute. There's that GIF that I keep using that I can't get enough of, where that pug goes, where it says, "Say that to my face," and then it zooms in on his face as he turns his head. And it's very cute. But they're also very, oh, GT does. You know what? Shut your fucking mouth about that shit. I have a reputation to uphold. All right. So Joel doesn't want to talk about pugs anymore, probably because his butt hurt. His feelings are hurt.
Also because timing. He was right about that.
But mostly feelings.
Yeah. that could be,
so let's
two
talk
things
about,
can be true at once.
Let's talk about Jussie. Has anybody else had a problem with this fucking cat's name? Jussie Smollett?
I mean, I have a problem with a lot of things about this guy.
Like, this is a really...
His name is probably pretty low on the list, but, like, I guess it's on it. I don't know.
But, from the moment
Jesse?
I was like, oh,
no, Jesse.
When I first heard about the cat, it was Jesse, or I thought that's what his name was. And when I first saw it in print, I was like, wait a minute, his name has a U instead of an E? What the fuck's going on here? And immediately I knew you can't trust anybody who has a U in their name like that, and their name should have an E. Like, your name's deceiving from the start. It's indicative of who you are internally, and we can't trust anything you say or do. Period. and that should have been our first warning sign. You have a U in your name. You're untrustworthy. Done. Next topic. No. So, this, I guess things have been... Shut the fuck up. Not the same. I have an A that contradicts the U. Okay.
And also that is how you spell the word auger.
It is.
Like,
thank you.
That's an actual word in the dictionary.
Oh, he changed. I didn't know you could edit. You're fucking.
Well, I didn't either.
There was this capital A, and all of a sudden it turned to a small case, and I was like, "Wait, how the fuck did you do that?"
You're small case.
Auger sucks. Auger is cool. I love these edits. These are fun. Okay, so Jussie Smollett is apparently officially now under investigation. This whole thing from the start, I don't think we need to go over what his original story was. I think everybody knows that by now. It's been pretty much...
But it's funny, so we're going to rehash it anyway. So, 2 a.m., the streets of Chicago remember several weeks ago where this was like world record lows for cold? Yeah. During that time, this guy allegedly gets beaten up by 2 white guys wearing MAGA hats in Chicago, mind you, saying this is MAGA country, again in Chicago, mind you.
Right.
And he was holding a Subway sandwich.
I was like, wait. What are 2 white dudes? Yeah. What are 2 white guys doing out at 2 a.m.?
And they recognized him from Empire. You know, the show that every MAGA fan watches, Empire. They also knew that he was gay, and they said the F word and the N word at him because that's what Trump supporters do.
Well, okay, so
they watch Empire.
Let's talk about that for a minute. His story changed when he gave his account to the police, and then when he went on television and did that interview with that lady, he gave two different accountings of what happened. So when he talked to the police, he said that he was approached by 2 people together, like they came at him together, and that they started the altercation with that phrase now that everybody knows, this is MAGA country, Nyogo. So and then when he went on television, he said that he saw one attacker and then the other came later after he was already getting beaten up, and that they ended it was after the beatdown that they said, this is MAGA country. Yoga. So, right off the bat, his stories changed, between on two separate occasions. He refused to get his phone when the police asked, can we have your phone so that we can verify some things or look at some things? And he was like, no, I'm not gonna give it to you. On top of that, well, before that, even let's go back to the fact that
he also had a noose around his. There was a noose put around his neck.
They put a noose
allegedly
around his neck, and they poured bleach on him.
40 minutes later, he still had the noose around his neck. He just didn't take it off.
And that was the first thing he did. Is he called his manager before he called the police, and it was 45 minutes later that the police were called, as I understand it.
Yeah.
When they arrived, he had a noose around his neck, and he still had the Subway sandwich. Who the fuck still has their sandwich? Like,
here's the thing: if I pay,
survive the beatdown, has anybody been mugged?
If I
or go ahead.
If I paid good money for that sandwich, I'm keeping a hold of that motherfucker. And so help me God, if you wreck up my sandwich while you're trying to beat my ass, I'm gonna fuck your world up, and you're not beating my ass because I'm gonna tear you apart for that fucking sandwich. Subway's not cheap, man. They are oppressed. They don't have the money to
lynched.
sandwiches.
If you're getting lynched, though, I agree. Subway is good.
Adam, no, you're not listening.
The subway
oppressed
before you
minorities,
your own lynching?
Oppressed minorities can't afford to be making it rain Subway.
Even while they're getting lynched.
Exactly.
Okay.
Make it rain Subway.
But yeah, to everyone's surprise, and the most major plot twist of all plot twists, the thing was fake.
Can we take 100 Subway sandwiches to with us?
Yeah, Cameron, you are correct. Team Jimmy John's all the way. Jimmy John's is a 10 out of 10. Subway is a 6 on average. Subway's been good. Subway's been bad. Depends.
But I think we should take Subway sandwiches and go to the local strip club and then just throw Subway sandwiches at them like they're dollars. Make it rain, bitch! I'm making it rain. Keep swinging on a pole. Gets a face full of fucking meatball sub. Wham! Like, dance, bitch, dance. Oh, I want to do that. So here's the deal. He still had a Subway sandwich. I'm sorry, if two guys really do hate you, first of all, your sandwich isn't surviving the beatdown, number one. Number two, you're gonna get a whole lot more than just like a fucking mark, a little cut under your eye or above your eye. I can't remember if it was above or under his eye. I remember seeing the picture, but I can't remember if it was above or below. That is not a beatdown. Like, you tripped and fell and you scraped yourself. That's what happened. That is not a fucking I hate you because of your skin color beatdown. That's not what those look like. I want Auger's meatball sub. Oh my gosh. Girl, I swear to God, pony girl. My fixation on you is unhealthy to like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, apparently, Cameron, where were the chips? Apparently, he didn't care about the chips,
so
which is that's the real tragedy here, is that the chips were neglected.
Right. So 3 theories have come out, or were coming out as to, because right off the bat, people were questioning the legitimacy of this claim as to what Jussie Smollett said happened. It just didn't, right off the bat, people were like, I don't know about this. This doesn't sound right. And of course he came out and he was like, you hate me because I'm gay or black.
Yeah,
or
you don't believe me because I'm gay and black. So
because you're all a bunch of racist fucks. Right. And so
the fact that you don't believe me just proves my point.
Right.
Like, okay.
Right. So
yeah, go screw yourself.
3 theories were coming out as to why he may have lied. Now, the first one that I had heard was, I think it was coming out of, from YouTubers, about the possibility that he was messing around at a gay club that he frequented with somebody's boyfriend, and that said boyfriend and a friend followed Jussie home and decided they were going to get back at him, like like a fit of jealousy, which that sounded like it could be something legitimate. Like, yeah, okay, you're fooling around with somebody's significant other. That's enough to spark somebody to decide to kick you or punch you or whatever. And maybe you didn't want to disclose that you were fooling around on behind somebody's back, and so you concocted this story. So that was the first thing I heard. Then I heard that it was possible that the studio was planning on booting him from the show he's on, Empire. I don't watch the show, so I don't know anything about it, except that he's on it. And that this was somehow a attempt to drum up enough media attention, to make it seem, to make it hard for them to go, well, now that he's in the public eye, we can't boot him now because it'll look bad. Like, sorry you got beat up, by the way, you're fired. Like, which I thought, okay, that sounds like it could be legitimate. But apparently the studios come out, I think it's Fox Studios, or I don't know. Anyway, they came out and said, no, we have no plans of getting rid of him. We never had any plans of getting rid of him. But then I heard, and apparently this is backed by sources with Chicago PD, that apparently the two people who the Chicago police have questioned in regards to this altercation were two Nigerian brothers who work as extras on the set and are friends with Jussie Smollett, who claim, supposedly, that Jussie hired them to put this whole thing, to stage this whole thing, and that they had rehearsed it weeks before. And this is all in response to, apparently, a letter that he received, like hate mail, at his work, which was some crayon picture of a black guy hanging from a tree, and it said Jussie, like there were cutouts from a magazine, like old school, like Holly, like nobody does that except in movies, like cutting out fucking letters out of magazines to make words. So, but apparently this letter, that's how it was done, and it said something like, Jussie Smollett, you faggot, like we hope that you die, or something like that. And apparently he was upset that it didn't get enough attention from the studio. The studio was like, yeah, well, that happens. People can't please everybody. Like,
nasty letters, like, yeah, I mean, when people are anonymous, they tend to do pretty crappy things.
Right.
Yeah.
So he apparently was upset that the studio did not do enough, or did not respond in the way that he saw fit, and felt that more was needed. It has since come out that it's possible that Jussie and these two Nigerians also made that letter. So the whole thing, from the start to finish, is completely made up. What the fuck is going on? Why would somebody do this? Like, that's what I want to know. I want him.
Here's why.
I want so desperately for him to go, well, shit, you got me dead to rights. There's really no way out of this. Yeah, I did it, and I was stupid, and here's why. That's all I want. I want to know why. Why would you make up that letter in the first place? What the fuck?
Because racism is in short supply and high demand.
There you go. Exactly.
That's the short version. The slightly longer version is that our culture today encourages victimhood. It rewards victimhood.
You're right.
And
you're right.
Rather than, like, and somebody made this point, like, I want to say on Twitter or in some article that was shared on Twitter, that would rather see a victim, or we have more praise for victims than heroes. So, like, for a man, you would rather, as a man, you would, like, rather be attacked, and that way everyone will unite around you and, you know, basically give you a free pass to do whatever you want, rather than you know, stepping up and being, you know, being heroic or anything like that. So
I guess my confusion lies in the fact that you weren't having you were on a nationally syndicated show. The studio said they didn't have any plans to boot you, although apparently now they're changing their tune.
I mean, they should.
Like talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. You made up a lie, or somebody like if it were true that he was like, oh shit, they're gonna get rid of me, and they weren't, and then he did this shit, and now they're like, well, now we are. Like, that's hilarious to me.
They should. Yeah.
They absolutely should distance themselves, as should anyone from anybody who's. What's so funny to me is that this. This is like. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. This basically is an indicator of in my opinion, of where we are with racism today. I feel like there's been this narrative sold by the media and sold by our liberal education system that minorities are oppressed, that racism's alive and well, and that Whitey is just a hateful, evil devil. And none of that's true. And I feel like this is a big window into the true state of racism in America today. It's so minor, in my opinion. I'm not going to say racism doesn't exist at all. Obviously it does. There are people out there who are just ignorant and they do things out of hate. Sure. But to say that it's on the rise, to say that it's widespread, to say it's institutionalized, I think is completely bullshit. And I think this is so true when you frame it with this Jussie Smollett situation, given the fact that he had to make it up in order to get the like he had
racism is in such short supply that he had to go and make it up himself. I can't find
anybody to hate on me. He apparently paid these Nigerian brothers $3,500. If a black man came to me tomorrow and said, could you beat my ass for $3,500? You're absolutely right, I will. You got it,
couldn't
buddy.
Even find white guys to do it.
All you want. I'll rehearse that shit for weeks. You got it. No problem.
Did you guys like that part in the interview where he's like, you know, if I said my attackers were black, you guys would obviously, you know, people would believe me automatically. And it's like, they were black.
Yeah. Also, if I said, not if they were, but if I said, as I've been making this up the whole time. It's just what details that I choose to fill in here.
Right.
No, but yeah, like this whole thing, like it goes to show, like the media in general, like has their motive is not necessarily to tell the truth, it's to make money. And what sells right now is an intense narrative that America is a racist place. And they are in the effort to get more clicks and get more people to freak out. Because like nobody's going to buy a story, like, I mean, as in like pay money for, you know, not buy as in believe, but like nobody's going to like pay money for a story that says, yeah, everything's kind of fine. Like we're all right. You know, like that's not news. Right. Like,
well, not only that, I think that's half of the story there.
Yeah.
Adam, I think the other half is that there's a legitimate agenda at work.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's not just about
it's not just about money. No. The entire left political ideology revolves around there being a villain in society, and that is white men.
Yes.
And like, if white men aren't these racist demons that the left makes us out to be, then well, there's a problem with their ideology, and they don't want to confront that. So. Yeah, of course. Like because like the mainstream media and the left are kind of one and the same at this point.
Which is why I think it's imperative, and I really hope. I mean, I hope that it goes this way, but I'm not holding out that it will. But I'm really hoping that we don't allow this Jesse Smollett situation. Now that it is, pretty much confirmed, he made this up. We need to hold on to it and really use that as the focal point for change. Like, look, stop this. We have the Covington kids before this. Now we've got this bullshit. Who is it? There's a guy on Twitter, Andy NGO, who posted a slew of tweets listing hoax after hoax after hoax after hoax since 2016 of hate crime hoaxes. The girl who claimed that a couple of guys pushed her around and tore her hijab off, made it up completely. There was never any two guys who did that. There were some girls some black girls on a bus said they were being accosted by a group of white people, and there was actual footage. There was like a camera on the bus. I can't remember if it was a bus or the subway. I think it was a bus. But there's like a camera that shows that they were the attackers. Like, they were harassing this group of white, like men, women, young, and then on top of that, when they called in to say, "Help, I'm being accosted," they forgot to hang up the phone before they started laughing about how funny it was that we attacked them. Like, it just goes on and on. And it's this trend that's been building that's like, are you so desperate to prove your point about what you believe to be the state of racism in America today that you're willing?
So we got one audience member that would like to be unmuted, and it looks like Face has already taken care of that. So, Dagger, you are on.
Oh, I unmuted him a while ago.
I'd like to say that we've really only seen this because the media's been losing money since the advent of social media. More people have been going to, Vice News, Forbes, Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, online news outlets. And so they're trying their hardest just to get people to click. And they're doing the same stuff that BuzzFeed does. And that's why we saw the rise of BLM and a lot of other groups, because they think, America's this bad, despite the fact that you look at FBI statistics, if you're black, you're just as likely to get shot.
Yeah. It really has everything to do with the crimes committed and nothing to do with, police just going out and saying, I'm going to shoot some black people today.
Yeah. And what sells more, a story about a white kid getting shot or a story about a black kid getting shot?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They're just in the market for making money. And the thing is despite the fact that they keep lying, and the more that they lie, we've seen a rise in, independence and people leaving the left, thankfully, and a rise in people supporting conservatives, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, it is. And the nice thing is, fact checking is now easier than ever. Because you can really go and with just a few clicks, you can read every side of a story, and you can if you go to the right places, you can easily get to the bottom of whatever is going on.
Yeah.
Well,
most of the news, they don't even follow up on it.
Didn't he? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say that most of the news, if you actually follow up on the stories, all of the narratives have been pretty much wrong.
Yeah, and it continues. And I think you nailed it, Dagger fella, with your statement about how they're trying to compete with online news outlets and Twitter feeds. Like, it's this desperation to get the story out there as quick as possible. And television and newspapers now are inherently, they're not going to be as fast as Twitter or the internet when it comes to getting the story first. So they have sacrificed their fact checking and their editing and their let's make sure that we have everything, all our ducks in a row. They don't care anymore because they don't have the time to do that. By the time they're done making sure they've got the story right, everybody's already, whether it's the right story or not, they're already turned on to it because of online apps or the internet or whatever. So I think you're right.
Yeah.
That this is a reaction to that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is as soon as the truth comes out, they're already reacting to the next bit of news. So
Yeah.
it's almost as if they don't have the time to do that. They're just perpetually triggering leftists.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Oh my, I had mentioned this earlier in chat. I was in a waiting room. I don't watch CNN typically, ever. I see clips when somebody points out, "Hey, look at this stupid shit that CNN points out," or this idiot said on CNN, stuff like that. That's about as close as I get to actually watching anything, CNN wise. But I was in this waiting room and I was watching. They had one TV and it was set to CNN, and it was just the whole time anti-Trump rhetoric, vitriol, and just falsehoods. And I was just watching this in shock and awe. And I couldn't help but think, like, if you, like, the only reason I'm able to say, well, I know that's wrong is because in my humble little way, like, I've done enough research on my own where I know on one or two things what the case really is. So I know, I know that CNN is talking bullshit about this or that or the other thing. So it's probably likely on these other things that they're more than likely talking out of their ass as well. But for your average viewer, I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's any homework being done. There's no research being done. And so they just absorb that and let CNN feed them or MSNBC or any of the other.
Yeah, because I mean the way things are, it rewards news outlets being first and not being right.
Right.
It doesn't reward them being right. It rewards them being first.
And I kind of feel like hopefully the Covington kids thing was a turning point, because it was directly after the Covington kids true story came out and everybody had to post retractions and apology letters, that all of a sudden all these media outlets fired a bunch of fucking journalists. All their op-ed, like Washington Post and BuzzFeed, got rid of them.
And then they started learning to code.
Right. So I think it was like something of like more than 1,000 journalists from a number of different news outlets were let go.
I mean, because they're losing money because people are sick of their BS. But the most frustrating thing is, like, people have, like, everyone is saying, like, okay, look, here's all you have to do. Just recognize that you're biased because you're a human and humans are biased. This isn't like a knock on you or anything, but just like check your bias just a little bit. And they're like, no, what are you talking about? Where are these truth tellers? And it's just like, okay, screw you. I'm going somewhere else. And then they lose money.
To be honest,
and then they're like, why? You know, we're such victims. We're under attack. It's just like, come on.
Yeah. To be honest, the only... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No,
okay, to be honest, the only reason why that they were able to have these kind of people and have articles like that they would put out that were knowingly false is because they were getting paid by venture capitalists who kept investing in places like Vice, Huffington Post, and other outlets. And the funny thing is after the Huntington or the Covington kids, after that, a lot of venture capitalists ended up pulling out from, web journalists.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, they do also have an audience of NPCs, for lack of a better term. That's just like, I mean, that's where you want to go if you're on the left and you just want confirmation bias. Like,
but I really want this to be the next nail in the coffin. I don't. Yeah. What I don't want is for it to just go away. This whole thing with Jesse Smollett. I don't want it to. I don't want the standard.
It's going to go away, though.
I mean, it wasn't what we thought it was, so let's all just shut up and move on to the next thing already. Like, no. I want there to be coverage of him being arrested, of him going to court. I want it nailed into their heads. Like,
yeah. The frustrating thing is the journalists themselves are not going to learn. The best we can hope for is that people, like the audience, will learn. They will know not to trust these people. But because I'm on Twitter quite a bit, and these journalists are the least self-aware people on the planet.
Yeah, no, you're right.
If you are banking on them to have a change of heart, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. What you can hope for is that reasonable people will be like, yeah, this is 2 weeks in a row that they've jumped on a story, and it's just been wildly wrong. And both of those are because it fits a left-leaning narrative. Maybe this whole left, maybe these people are very biased to the left, and I should, if I'm looking for objective news coverage, I should go somewhere else.
God, I remember back in 2012 or 2013 when I thought it was a complete fallacy that there was such a thing as a liberal news agenda.
Yeah.
I was like,
I always thought it was at least exaggerated, maybe a
media.
little bit true, but a little exaggerated as well.
And now it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, that is the nice thing about Trump. They hate Trump so much that they are not afraid to show their bias.
Yeah.
2 scoops.
Yeah. 2 scoops of ice cream. That's news now.
That voice was brilliant.
Fried chicken with fork.
Here's a legitimate question for you, though.
What's that?
All right, here's a question for you, though. You're talking about this is going to be a nail in the coffin. This has been going on in its current form for 10 years, actually longer than that. But I would say you marked the start of Obama's term where it just, any semblance or pretension of neutrality basically went out the window. And basically Fox went far right, and even then they've come back left. But the left went far left, and they stay to the left. This isn't the first hoax. I mean, somebody was talking about the list of hoaxes on one of the message boards I'm on for A&M grads, TexAgs. Other Adam probably knows about it.
Yeah,
on
TexAgs.
There's a deal on there where somebody has a running list of all the fake hoaxes. You have the person at the Air Force Academy, that if you remember the general, the commandant, gave a very, this is disgusting. You have no place here. And it turns out that the guy was the one that vandalized his own locker room, sent himself the letter, and it quietly went away. You had the guy at the black church that wrote Heil Trump, and he got caught on camera. That one went away.
Was their gay organist?
The banana on canvas.
Yeah. You have the governor of Virginia and lieutenant governor, which was all the news just a week and a half ago. I would bet anyone you're not going to hear another peep about that. It went away. So you're saying, oh, this is a nail in the coffin. This is a nail in the coffin. No, it's not. This whole Jesse Smollett bullshit is going to be completely forgotten in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I guarantee.
The mainstream media will go on as is. By the way,
nothing is going to change, and nothing's going to happen because
not to
people
interrupt
buy
here.
into it.
Not to interrupt here, but we do have Missy Money that would love to speak. Other Nicole.
All right, okay.
I'm just providing her the window.
Are you there?
You can unmute it. She's unmuted on our end. She's muted on hers, though.
Oh, unmute yourself, bitch.
Damn it.
You better figure this shit out.
I'm sitting here talking to myself.
I stick my neck out for you.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi, baby.
My pony girl.
I'm so fucking dumb. It's a good thing I'm pretty because I'm not smart. Jesus. Oh, God. No, I've been sitting here arguing with myself and being a little bit upset that you guys weren't listening to me.
No, you gotta look at next to your name. If there's a microphone with this line through it, then you're muted.
Well, I'm driving.
Yeah, that'll do it.
So I'm not looking at anything.
Okay.
Good.
That's it. It's always good to not look at things when you're driving. That's good. Solid plan.
Solid plan. But no, yeah, I know. I was as I was arguing to myself, I was saying that the whole deal with the governor and blackface and the KKK and
oh my God, yes.
It's all gone. And it doesn't matter, who it was or what it done it or who done it, because it's all going to get erased if it ties back to those liberal pansies.
Right. Because the only time it matters is if it's a Republican or a conservative who they caught doing it. The minute it became a liberal, did you see that CNN even purposefully, well, I mean, you can't, they claim it was a faux pas on their part, but I tend to believe that they did it on purpose. But apparently when they were posting on CNN, they had a picture of him up, and they were talking about how he had been found. What's his name? Northam?
Yeah, Ralph Northam. Yeah, they had an R next to his name instead of a D.
Yes, yeah. Yes. They labeled him as a Republican, and it's like, you sons of bitches. I know you did that on purpose because you so desperately. It's such a thing to like distance themselves. They can't be seen, and they refuse to acknowledge that any of them can be connected with any sort of racism, or if it's racist, then it's obviously on the right. We're never racist, the left says.
Yeah.
And that's such bullshit.
Yeah, speaking of that attitude, like, I loved when, I don't know if you saw, like, Chelsea Clinton recently on Twitter. She was, like, basically, like, reaching out to several people with that Ilhan Omar stuff.
Oh, my God.
Ilhan responded to her, Chelsea was like, yeah, I'd like to, like, speak to her, about, like, anti-Semitism in general. And then Ilhan responded, oh, I'm happy to speak to speak about anti-Semitism from the GOP. Like, as in, oh, it only comes from this, and not from me, who just made multiple anti-Semitic comments in the last few weeks. Like, come on. But yeah, like, Republicans are the only bad guys, and, like, that's the thing.
So, I have a bit of an issue with I'm a bit biased when it comes to Islam. I know, right? No, but when it comes to Islam, I have a bit of an issue. I am biased. And I from what I understand, we used to have a law in this country that you could not hold political office and be a Muslim. Now, I know that kind of goes against the Constitution.
I mean,
is that not correct?
Vastly unconstitutional. If the law even existed in the first place, I don't know if it did. I've never heard of this. Lawyer Adam might know.
I've read that we had something on the books saying
no, dude, no, that's fucking retarded. No.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just telling you.
Like, maybe some local, like some obscure local municipality had some stupid rule like that, and they got away with it for a while. But like, there was never a national law. I don't think.
Right. Okay. I don't know to what extent. I'm just telling you. That's what I heard. I don't know the extent of the truth of that. Maybe it's completely rumor. I don't know. I know it's unconstitutional, but I kind of feel like we need to. Can we? Is that something that we could add as an amendment? Could you amend the Constitution to make an exception
and say, "Hey, that freedom of religion stuff"? Just
Islam,
kidding.
You know what? On everything else, except for this one thing,
could you theoretically? Would it ever happen?
Gosh,
absolutely not.
There is actually an amendment similar to that. It was the Titles of Nobility Amendment. And technically, it's still pending before the states, although it's not going to go anywhere. And so, that was about the closest you got, although it wasn't along religious grounds. That one, if I'm not mistaken, was after, I think, the War of 1812, when we kind of, got our, shit knocked around by Britain, and they kind of rallied up and passed it. What it basically said is that you couldn't, accept foreign, any titles of nobility or foreign honor that would include like religious roles, stuff like that, possibly sent into it, but it didn't go anywhere. It was submitted to the states, which 3/4 of the states have to pass it, and obviously it died. But no, to answer your question, no, it wouldn't happen. Yeah, if you amend the U.S. Constitution, it's the highest in the land.
That's one of the hardest
things. It ain't gonna fucking happen.
Yeah,
I know.
One of my left-leaning friends was like, he posed this question a while back. It was like, is eliminating the Second Amendment on the table? And I'm like,
No.
okay, in what sense? In the, could this theoretically happen? Yes. I mean, there's constitutional provisions for its own amendment, but it's deliberately really, really hard to do. So is this practically going to happen? No. And should it happen? Also no. That was kind of the gist of that conversation.
That's kind of the thing. Here's my issue is that I just don't feel like the tenets of Islam are not they don't mesh with Western idealism. They don't mesh with the Western way of life at all. Like there's no reconciling that. And I just don't feel like it's a good idea to let them make laws or to establish themselves in a political sense in this country. And the reason I say that is because everywhere they've done this elsewhere, like there's a pattern of how they do things. And you can see that in every other country that's become a primarily Muslim country.
I will give a counterpoint to that.
Okay.
By all polling data, there is a significant difference in the attitudes of westernized Muslims versus Muslims that live in Islamic countries.
Westernized,
specifically regarding
when you say westernized, are you talking about specifically the U.S. or in the West?
Europe and the U.S.
That's what fucking westernized means, asshole. Western, Western culture.
Yeah, like the U.S. and Western Europe.
Okay, bitch.
But
the
basically,
reason I asked that is because I needed to know so that I could counter what he's saying, because I disagree. The stats don't add up when it comes to the UK. You've got
that. Well, okay. The reason that Europe is kind of
in the East. Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm talking about the ones that have been in Western countries for several generations, not this fresh wave of immigrants that have been happening over the last few years. Like, I'm not counting them because culturally they are basically the same as Islamist, like Islamic countries.
Okay, all right.
I'm not talking about them, but the Muslims that are basically like, were like born and raised in America, for instance, are vastly different in ideology from Muslims that were born and raised in like Iran or Saudi Arabia,
right?
Is specifically regarding like radicalism and like Sharia law, stuff like that.
Well, see,
their
and I
attitudes
guess that
on
makes
Israel
sense.
might line up to an extent. I don't know. I haven't seen the polls on that, but like,
what's that, bitch?
I believe in Sharia law because I don't want to work the rest of my life.
Are you gonna be like that girl that like ran away from her parents and joined ISIS?
And then got
Joel's here to ruin.
Yeah, and then got raped and got pregnant and now wants to come back. Yeah.
Hang on, Joel wants to ruin everybody's fun. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah.
We were talking about the coloreds. He's all about it.
Shut up. No, the audience is getting restless. So.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, this is old. I mean, enough. We get it. You hate fucking Muslims. Let's go on.
I don't hate Muslims. I don't hate Muslims. I hate
You
Islam.
just said
There's a
that to
difference.
start with. You guys know I have a serious problem with Muslims. So move on.
You have a serious problem with Muslims?
Didn't you start out saying, I have problems with Muslims? I'm like, well, Shit. Let's just move on, Auger.
It's like, well, we know now.
All right. But I don't hate Muslims, just to clarify. All right, so let's move on. All right, so let's talk about panties.
Yeah.
I think this is a good segue.
Great segue. Sharia
Speaking
law
of
to panties.
Muslims, how about those thongs? So, the reason this got brought up is because somebody in our group recently bought a whole slew of panties, which were $20 a piece.
Jesus.
Fucking yeah, they are. You want cute panties? You want to wear your grandma's trash?
So here's what I want to talk about. Like what I've heard different things from different girls throughout my life when it comes to panties. Like there's the old stereotype of like, you know, you have your pretty panties for when you expect that clothes are going to come off, and then you've got a whole drawer full of granny panties otherwise.
Okay, that's not a stereotype. That's facts. We all have that. That's not a stereotype. That's not something that some girls do, and the other rest of us are like, oh no, I use my pretty panties all the time. No, you've got your ugly panties. You're sitting around and eating fucking popcorn in bed, okay, while you're on your period and drinking Coke, okay? And you got your pretty panties that I don't even let my boyfriend touch. Okay? We can be heat of the moment off and he goes to grab them and I will fucking smack him. Those are mine.
Very territorial.
Gently fold them and put them on.
Hang on, Cameron. I'll unmute you.
Joel
he should be unmuted.
Yeah,
so here's
he must be muted on his end.
The other thing I've heard.
Your own microphone now, Cameron.
I've also heard some women that they refuse to wear thongs. Be bothersome. It's uncomfortable.
Ugly women
wear thongs. Why? Wait. Explain that. Why do ugly girls not wear thongs?
Because nobody's gonna fucking see them.
Ugly to you.
Awesome! Oh my god.
Okay. You know, want to know that sometimes you do yourself to feel good. It's not about others seeing them. Come on.
I wear a thong reading pants every day of my life. Reading pants don't lie, and they will show you digging into. No.
Invisible panty line. Angel, ironically.
That's not true.
Dagger, you call me.
Ooh.
Majority of women that I've been with a few homely girls. The majority of the girls that I've been, in my opinion,
on maybe two pictures.
No, typically I date. Yeah.
He's not going to share pictures of the ugly ones now.
And I was an 8. Dated a 9 once.
That's because you girls laugh, and that's the biggest turn on, I think.
He made me pay for dinner, though.
Back to panties. Am I the only girl in here that prefers not to wear them? Because I hate them in general. I feel like I'm wearing a diaper.
After a certain number of piercings, going commando is not an option.
Dagger fella, who the fuck are you? Like, who are you in Facebook world?
He told us.
Yeah.
Nicole.
He did? I didn't.
You didn't keep up with
Who is
chat.
it?
That's on you.
Who did he say was?
Now I'll never know.
You assholes. I will mute every single one of you.
He's a friend of Foy and Wrinkle.
Oh, Greg?
No, Robert.
I have nowhere else to park. This is the only spot.
Oh, Robert. Okay, cool. So here's the deal.
Okay.
Been with girls who've said.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Josh.
I'll find another
So
spot.
I've been with girls.
It's real tight.
Oh
in
my
there.
gosh.
We might have.
I can't. Adam, third Adam.
Yeah,
Why
I got
can't
it.
you hear me?
I muted her.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay, so I've heard from some of the girls I've been with that they wear thongs constantly because they're like, well, it's going to ride up my ass anyway, so I might as well just go with the stuff that's designed to do that in the first place.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I wear underwear, which is only when I absolutely have to, I always go with the thong, because the others, I feel like I'm wearing a tight diaper. I hate it.
Now, I'm curious, because you're I just mean you're physical. And you're typically wearing jeans, are you not?
I wear jeans when I have to, like when I'm working closely with barbed wire. But I actually prefer to work in my yoga pants. I fucking love them. They get torn up by barbed wire and shit all the time, but I don't.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I was just going to ask. I was like, I have to imagine jeans would be uncomfortable to not wear something between you and the jean material.
Yeah, it depends on the jeans.
Fair enough.
Amanda, did you want to jump in on the panty convo? I saw her in chat.
Yeah, she may not be up.
She loves wearing panties, and she has really pretty panties, and they make her feel sexy. I get that.
I mean, I like them all right. I just, I don't pay enough attention. I don't pay that much attention, as much attention as some women would prefer, because my thought is they're probably coming off anyway.
Exactly.
Like by the time I'm seeing them, like they're on their way off. Like, so it's like, yeah, all right. Oh yeah, the pretty colors. That's great. All right, whatever. Yeah.
So,
and
hey,
nothing
Augie. So I'd like to cut in here for just a second, because Chance just straight called my ass out in chat. He said, "Isn't the period panties heathens underwear?" So in the shop where I work, for anybody who's unaware, I own a piercing shop and a motorcycle repair shop. So I, at this point, because I work so closely with these poor men, they know a lot about me, probably more than they need to and want to, but that's fine. So I came in one day and I was bloated to shit and crampy as fuck, and even granny panties were cut. Heathen, who happens to be my my husband, he fucking, so because he does, and later cramping real fucking ugly, get some goddamn compression short. It helps. So I roll in one day pissed and just angry and achy, and everything was awful, and the boys were laughing at me because I'm over here like adjusting all the layers I'm wearing. One of them happened to have been literally my, what are you doing? I was like, I'm literally now, because I am dragging the air or cutting in because I'm that fucking bloated. Really help the cramp. John's just called me out for wearing my husband's underwear as period panties. Find a man who will share his underwear with you for your period and marry that motherfucker.
But that's the way around.
Might as well.
Aren't they? So why aren't those the same as like women's underwear? They're called boy shorts, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're not compression shorts. Boy shorts are just a style.
Yeah,
boy short. It's just the cut, boy shorts. But no, compression. Like, and here's the thing: because of the size difference between my husband and I, his compression shorts, when I pull them all the way up, literally come damn near to my bra strap.
Out of your body.
Like, they're fucking huge, but it's like being snuggled all day. It's so good, and it's like
somebody's just hugging
like,
your crampy.
Yes, like not a hard enough hug to make you like go full on ketchup packet, but enough of a hug to chill out your cramps.
Right.
It's so good. Nicole's laughing at my ketchup packet.
Yes, I am.
Women, if you've never been hugged tight enough to like blush a little bit, like you're not living life right. But really, so not a ketchup packet hug, but just a snuggly, comforting hug.
That's awesome.
Oh God.
I think I saw a cartoon once, like a comic strip where it was some kid. It was a woman laying down, and then a guy standing on the bed, and then he jumps off the bed and lands on the woman's stomach. And because she's on her period, just as some guy walks through the door, and then the guy on the bed jumps on the girl's stomach, and blood squirts and hits the other guy in the face. And I thought, that's really funny. I don't think that's how that works, but it
That sounds
sure
an
would
awful
be
lot
funny if
like.
it did.
That sounds an awful lot like munting.
What's munting?
It's some necro shit.
Sounds disgusting.
Yeah.
I have to know what it is now. What is munting?
So munting is a small variation on mung huffing or munging, where essentially with munting, it's more of a team sport where you have your female cadaver and you form a seal around her vagina with your face, your mouth, preferably, and one of your buddies jumps on her, basically her torso area, so that all of the formaldehyde and all of those fluids and gases that we use to embalm, as well as any leftover, goodness on the inside up to and including maggots, just bloop, right down your throat, straight down the pipe. Everybody just got so fucking quiet. Jesus Christ, you guys.
Daggerfella's like, how do you know about this?
Well,
I've
sir.
gone my whole life, and you could have never told me that, and I would have been happy.
But now, what's more important than being happy is now you know a thing. And knowledge is more important than happiness any day of the week.
Is half the battle.
Listen,
Damn right, Adam.
Is it bad that I had actually heard the term mung huffing before?
Ooh. Adam, I love you.
Wait. Little Christian boys heard the term mung huffing before? What church are you going?
I mean, I'm his friend.
Yeah, because
so
obviously I heard
that.
the term at church, Auger. That's exactly where I heard it.
Well, I mean, we had that whole talk about how they're all necromancers.
I definitely don't have the internet.
I just assumed, I don't know how it works with you guys.
What kind of porn are you watching?
You live in the church, don't you? Like you all, like a dorm room kind of situation?
No.
He didn't even try and
I don't even have
or
a
joke with it. He
comeback
just
for that. It's
he
just
shut it down. He was like,
It's a dorm room. It's an altar.
Church, I accidentally used the term Netflix and chill at church one time.
Did you really?
Yeah, it was a institute where we study the scriptures, and they're like, "Hey, what are some fun activities you guys do outside of church?" And people were like, "Oh, go to the movies." I was like, "Netflix and chill," and there was like a dead silence, and I was like, because I thought I meant it literally, like you watch Netflix. And
so you didn't even know of the other meaning.
No.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
That's adorable. You're precious. I'm keeping you.
My precious.
Oh, pony girl. What would I do without you? You are too far away. I swear to God, I'm gonna move to Florida just to harass your ass. Like, let's.
I'm leaving.
I was only there for a while.
Oh.
Yeah.
You go back to Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're a Jersey girl.
I am.
Whatever, I'll move to Jersey then. Fuck it. How come you're? Hey, so is Jersey Shore indicative, like truly indicative of what Jersey folks are like?
If you want to get into this conversation, I dated a kid my freshman year in high school who was a lifeguard for the Jersey Shore. He lived in the same town. He lived one street over from the Jersey Shore house. He watched them walk to the shore every day. And he would watch them walk down the boardwalk, and people would dive into the trash cans after their trash.
Oh my God.
I too remember the mid-2000s.
Sure, sort of culture.
You never know what you're gonna find in the trash. It could be a treasure, you know.
Yeah, it could be
Hey, please don't in the trash any day of the week.
Hi, thanks for checking in. I'm so
Ever read Child of God by Cormac McCarthy? I haven't read that one yet. It's about a guy who only can love dead bodies. He's a hermit, and he found a dead couple in a car, and that's how he started it. Oh wow! Now I have to read that. Daggerfella, have you read Blood Meridian? That is my favorite of Cormac's works. Grilled cheese. My girlfriend reads his stuff. Oh, you don't? So you don't read his stuff? I'm disappointed in you now. I thought you were cool, but you're not cool. You're a poser. Get out of my chat right now.
real quick,
I have a question for Adam.
Audible subscription, and I have to tell you guys, Audible
Me or
is where
lawyer Adam?
You, Adam.
Great.
Why is it that in the hardest times of my life, there was only one set of footprints? You know?
Because sand people walk in single file to hide their numbers.
I want to know, does Jesus love me? Oh. Oh,
Well,
okay. That's kind of I'm referencing a radio segment that I don't.
Yeah, that old trope. Yeah, I grew up in the church. I know exactly what you're talking about. My favorite.
What the fuck's he talking about?
Okay, so the for those of you who did not grow up with boomers in a church, what we're referring to is this basically it's basically a copy pasta, and it goes something like this: that a guy dies and he looks back on his life, and his life is represented by footprints in the sand. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's people walking alongside him, and sometimes those footprints go away. And he says, okay, well, God, what were those times when it was just one set of footprints? And the original one says okay, well, that's when Jesus was carrying you. And
right.
But my favorite response to that is sand people walk in single file to hide their numbers.
So
we can segue into one world religion. Is it a good idea?
Yeah.
Actually, I kind of do. I want it. There's a couple of topics that I want to make sure that we get to. There's 3 to be precise, and each is going to be headed by a different co-host, which is awesome. So, Adam, I kind of want to give you the floor on this. This goes into 2 things, which is the topic of democratic socialism and Christianity, how they're different, how they're not the same. And I'd like to segue that into one world religion, which is something that I posted a link. I can post it again. I guess the Pope, which I know you're Christian, you're not Catholic, but I'd like your input on what you think about this. I guess the Pope and the head imam or one of the head or a representative.
Yeah, I saw something about that. I didn't actually read into it.
They got together and
basically we're yeah, we're cool.
They declared love for each other and kissed each other and read some big love letter to one another and I guess the whole thing is that it's a step towards a one world religion. And so I kind of want to know what you think of that. But okay. I'm gonna leave you the floor, and why don't you tell us?
So we'll get to that one world religion thing in a second. But the democratic socialism in Christianity thing came up in our AdMod Fun chat because our good friend Christian posted an article that basically said, and I've seen this attitude shared quite a bit. And
Adam, hold on, just real quick. I'm sorry. I need to address something to make sure everybody is clear. The co-hosts and I are the only ones who stay permanently unmuted. When we bring people on to join the conversation, we try and rotate them in and out so that we don't have too many voices going at the same time. So if you found yourself muted again, it's because we've moved on to whatever we were talking about. We haven't talked to you in a while. If you'd like to be unmuted again, just let us know. It's nothing personal. It's just we try and keep a select group at any given time unmuted so that there's not too many people talking over each other. All right, go ahead.
Okay. So as I was saying, I've seen this attitude kind of shared in pretty relatively minor amounts of people, because most people in the Bible Belt tend to lean right. But there are some like left-leaning Christians, and they all have this attitude of, well, things like universal healthcare, things like welfare, those are Christian, because Jesus calls us to take care of the poor. And this is completely ignorant. It actually makes me pretty bad when I hear this, because it completely misses the point that basically Jesus, his entire message is you should be a selfless person. You should take care of the poor out of the goodness of your own heart. That is vastly different than saying we should, institute these big government social programs and everything, because that's what God would want us to do. Bullcrap. Because, and I was talking about this in our AdMod chat, is that the thing is, like, everyone expected the Messiah to be a political figure, and Jesus was expressly not that.
Right.
Yeah. Like that, and that was the entire point, was like, people expected this guy to, come down from heaven, seize power in a dramatic fashion, and then institute divine will from above. And that is the exact opposite of what happened. He came down, he expressly did not get into politics, except when the people were, specifically telling the Pharisees to go screw themselves. And but that's it. He never seized power for himself. In
right.
fact, he was a servant to a lot of people, and because he was about setting an example of like, okay, it doesn't matter what political system you're under, be a good person, take care of each other. That was the entire message. Right. But do this voluntarily.
To serve others is supposed to be Christian. It's supposed to be godly.
Yeah. And so this idea that it's God's will to institute this stuff from the level of government is just completely ignorant. And I don't know, like it. And the other point that I brought up was like the third commandment, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain. Okay.
Oh yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
The most common interpretation of that, or at least like the most kind of mainstream, is don't say things like, oh my God, or God dang it,
or God damn it,
or stuff like that.
Christ.
But I heard an argument a while back that actually makes a lot of sense. Is that it's, in the grand scheme of things, God really doesn't care if you like say a few words. That's not what that commandment is about. What that commandment is about is really when you do something and you say, I'm doing this in the name of God, when it's really just something that you want to do. You are invoking the name of God in vain.
Like wasn't that the issue with God damn it, Moses?
Specifically,
I
what?
like how you use the Lord's name in vain while asking. That was funny.
So wait,
no, but like, I mean, the example that I like Moses, to bring up is like
Moses could do all those fancy things, right? Because he would invoke the name of the Lord, and it was the Lord's will. Like, okay, cool, I'll do these things. But then didn't he, like, what was it that he did? Was it parting the Red Sea or something where he didn't invoke the Lord's name and the Lord let it happen? But he was like,
I know what you're talking about. It's not parting the Red Sea. This was much later what you're talking about.
Okay. Please elaborate. I'm sorry.
I honestly don't remember, to be honest.
It's been a while since I've read the stories. So.
I don't remember, to be honest. But like an example of what I'm talking about is like Joel Osteen, for instance. He's a great example of this, where his message, which is like, give me money and God will bless you. Well, that's expressly non-biblical, and he's using the name of God to spread this message and enrich himself. That is really what I believe the third commandment is about prohibiting,
Yeah.
is, because like it's one thing if you were to go out and say, hey, give me money, but if you say, hey, give me money because that's what God wants you to do, that's an extra level of wrong.
Yeah.
And so the reason I bring this up is when people say, it is God's will, it's Christian to be a democratic socialist and advocate for, free healthcare, stuff like this from a governmental level, that to a degree is using the name of the Lord in vain, because like the entire message of Jesus was, you need to do this voluntarily out of the goodness of your heart, as in donate to charity. Don't vote for people that are just going to use use your tax dollars the way that you want them to.
Like a good example of that about volunteerism is the tomb that Jesus was buried in belonged to Joseph of Arimathea. He was a very wealthy follower of Jesus Christ, and Jesus, so far as was the records that we have, he never was like, Joseph, you better give me your grave. I mean, no, Joseph voluntarily gave it to him and said, you can have this. And
yeah,
I mean, there are other examples, but that's the one that popped in my head.
Yeah, the example I always go to is the rich young ruler, where he comes to Jesus and he says, okay, what do I need to do to get into heaven? And Jesus says, okay, sell all your possessions, give them to the poor. And he has a problem with that. And he's like, okay, I don't really want to do that. Now, Jesus obviously had, being God in the flesh, he could easily have said, no, you're doing this, and I'm going to make you do it. But that's not what happened. He let the guy walk away. And that was it.
He turned the other cheek.
I mean, yeah, like basically he left the rich young ruler to his own choice, and that was it. There wasn't any force involved. And right. So that's really the biggest example to me of like, yes, you are called to do this. This is your duty, but it is still your choice at the end.
Isn't it possible that Joseph just gave him his grave to hedge his bets? Like, isn't it possible he was just trying to curry favor with God, like just in case this Jesus guy was telling the truth?
Well, I mean, we're all human essentially. So I mean, I don't know we don't know 100% his motives, but I would like to think that part of that was faith. But yeah, it could have been part of it was like, I hope this, will help me out,
I mean, you know what? I didn't even know. Cameron, are you religious?
Yeah, I'm part-time religious, as I like to think. Like, I really believe in my faith. I'm grew up LDS. That's the Mormon Church, as people nickname it. I went on
Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, I went on a 2-year mission in Texas. So I've preached the gospel before, but I mean, if you were to ask me like specific, quotes or like, give you actual verses, that would probably be harder for me. But I remember generally a lot about the gospel. So,
part-time religious. I'm curious. I thought most missions, Mormon missions, took place abroad, like in like third world countries.
It really depends. I mean, so yeah, I served in Texas. I mean, I had friends, that went overseas. They put people all over the world. So they basically just try to put you somewhere outside of your neighborhood, your home. So I live in Washington. They could have potentially put me in like Montana or Oregon if they wanted to, but they chose to put me in Texas. So not necessarily like trying to get you as far as possible, but just putting you into a different area where they believe that they feel like you're called to serve. But in the reason why I wanted to make comments on this is because, interestingly enough, one of the things that I sometimes have trouble with, I was in a singles ward, so it was like a lot of young adult congregation, And I had a hard time fitting in with that crowd because so many of them took to this idea of, democratic socialism, like that the gospel was really hinting at a more political thing. And I kept trying to tell them, like, no, you guys are confusing like man's concepts with God's concepts. And there are countless times within the scriptures that Adam can probably back up. And there are times like with the leaders within our own church where they have said explicitly, like, this is not to be confused with communism or socialism. These are very separate principles. Like we have a thing in the church that's called the law of consecration. Essentially, you're supposed to, once you get to a certain point in the church, you're supposed to give everything that you have to God, but voluntarily. Like,
what does that mean materialistically?
Well, it means like you consistently pay a 10% tithe. So every time you get paid or you get an increase of some kind, you give 10% of that to the Lord. And it means that anytime you see somebody in need, you always try to do the right thing. Now, obviously, like I said, I'm a part-time. What I mean by that is I fail sometimes to live that law. So I don't always do the right thing. It's hard to be. You can't be perfect. So you just strive to the best of your abilities to live that law. Like, so I try to pay my tithing when I can. I try to help out when I can. I try to, reach out to those that might be lonely, or doing what the Savior would have me do, essentially. Like that's the ultimate commandment, is to be like him. That's the manner of men that we're supposed to be.
Right. You're supposed to be Christ-like.
Yeah. The entire point of Jesus doing what he did was to set an example for us, rather than say from a position of authority, you must do this. No, it's like more like, I'm going to lead by example. That was Jesus's entire mission.
Right. Which I completely appreciate and respect, and I think that in and of itself is worthy of following. I'm curious though, what'd you call it? The consecration?
The law of consecration.
So it's not essentially that you have to give everything you have to the church. It's 10% of tithing, so 10% of everything you make goes to the church.
Yeah, there's like you've heard the phrase, there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And I think, the spirit of the law is more important than the letter, because if your heart's not converted to the law, then you don't believe in it. And why are you following it? You should be following the laws, that you're converted to, essentially. So, sorry, my mind kind of blanked.
No, that's okay.
No, that's exactly right. I agree with that at 100%. Like, and honestly, like, that kind of principle is the reason that, like, I have I don't want to say I have less respect for the Catholic Church, but like the Catholics that I've interacted with tend to be more aligned with the letter of the law rather than the spirit of the law, and that's kind of the gripe that I have with Catholicism. One of my good friends, like, I remember she and I were electrical engineering students together. That's where we met, and there was one night when like we needed to study together, and it was around like Easter, where Catholics have all this, Lent and Ash Wednesday. I don't even know all this stuff, but basically the issue was like, okay, does she have to go to mass? And she was like, okay, well, I think I do have to, so I'm not going to be able to meet up and study. And then like later it was like, oh, just kidding, I actually checked, and like we're not required to go. And that kind of like stuck out to me, because it's like, okay, well, yeah, you're not required, but that's kind of missing the point, right? You should like
want to go.
I've grown up with the attitude, or with the idea of, you are never required to go to church. You want to go to church. That's the entire thing, and like you should want to. because of what it is. You should want to interact with the community. You should want to go to a place and worship. Like, it's never about you have to do this.
Right.
But
and just to clarify really quick, Adam LaHood, I wasn't muted, you ass. I just was listening to other people talk. You fucking prick. Yes, I know I talk a lot. That's why it's called the House of Auger Show and not the Adam LaHood Show. You dick. So choke on that. All right, continue about your. Let's continue talking about Jesus now.
But yeah, so like, I mean, I guess that's a good transition into like the one world religion thing, because that's more of a Catholic thing now that the Pope is kind of pushing that. I don't know. It from my understanding, it just completely flies in the face of typical Christian doctrine. That
right? Not only does it fly in the face of typical Christian doctrine, but the Quran specifically states, like, there is one religion and it's ours. We're not going to share.
No,
anything.
And Christianity is the same way. And well, I'll get to Islam in a second, but Christianity, I mean, the famous verse, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." That's pretty explicit, right? And so, like, Islam, who regards Jesus as basically just another prophet, obviously that's not it.
Right.
So there's not a lot of breathing room there.
Correct. But more importantly, I feel like Islam is a much more volatile and combative religion and faith, and their behavior speaks to that. There's a historical pattern of such.
I would say it lines up more in tone with the Old Testament rather than the New Testament is very, very pacifistic.
Yes,
and
you've got a doctrine of peace compared to a doctrine of war. Like, we will
basically,
we're going to take over the world through peace and love, and then these guys over here are like, no, we're gonna kill you motherfuckers. Like, you join us or you die. It's that simple. Like, we're not gonna mince words. We're not gonna play around. And I just don't see how that can be how does that work? How do you turn that into one religion?
Well,
the only way I can see that from an Islamic perspective, when I hear one world religion, I hear, we're going to shake hands with all of you until we get the chance to stab you all in the back, and then all that'll be left is us, and then you'll have your one world religion.
You're going to convert, and then we're all going to be the same. No. I mean, I don't know how Islam. I don't know what the Quranic justification for that is, but I mean, the interesting thing is, like, this was a long time ago. I was really curious as to, like, what radical Islam uses as, like, kind of their justification for their philosophy, and so I actually, like, read a little bit of the Quran, and basically, like, how explicit is it? Are they actually reading their book correctly, and literally, or is it, just them basically making stuff up? I found a really interesting passage that it basically says the Christians and the Jews basically the attitude is that Islam is the full revelation of God, and Judaism and Christianity are just partial revelations of God. And so
they're like lost.
Yeah, Muslims are basically are called to, in this passage, treat the Jews and Christians with mercy, because basically it's like, okay, the full truth hasn't been revealed to them, so don't hold them to the same standard.
They're not entirely infidels.
Yeah,
they're called
exactly.
If I remember correctly, they're referred to as the people of the book. And so, from the Islamic doctrine, what from their perspective, as I understand it, is when we take over, the Jews and the Christians will be allowed to continue to operate and live, and they can even have their faith, but they will have to pay some sort of, they'll be taxed based on that. Like, since you're not, we don't hate you, and we'll allow you to continue to believe what you believe, but you're going to pay us as penance or whatever, as a tithing for being so generous to allow you to live.
I haven't heard that, but granted, I only read like a very small part of the Quran, but yeah, it was really interesting because that really just like that whole idea of like basically leave them alone because they're kind of like naive. That whole attitude is just non-existent in, definitely in radical Islam, and to a degree in a lot of
book of Islam, the Bukkake.
A lot of contemporary Islam as well. So I just thought that was really interesting.
It is very interesting, but I Bukkake. That's what I said. I said Bukkake.
Yeah.
But no, I've heard of that text before. I forgot the name of it, but when
right, it's basically this is the price you pay for not joining Islam, for being not completely of the faith.
Well, historically, what Islam would do is, they would war with those that they're the infidels, and they would conquer them. They would take the women over, and then they would keep like the children because they were young enough, to be kind of hopefully taught up into the ways.
Right.
So, but then there was a tax, and I forgot the name of it, and it only applied, it was a unnecessary burden.
Islam is very pro-diversity as long as you're Islamic. Like, they don't care they don't care what you look like. They don't care what your gender is, as long as you say Islam is for me and I will obey the rules of Islam.
Because it's a religion that was made,
if you're white, Asian, doesn't matter to them.
It was made to unite the Bedouins. Like the Bedouins being these kind of warring tribes in the Middle East. Muhammad basically grew up in this environment of all these people just fighting for years and years on end. He traveled around and he saw Christianity, he saw Judaism, and basically, like, from a historical standpoint, unless you actually believe in the divinity of Islam, he basically kind of made his own spin on this and tried to unite these tribes together, and it worked.
Right.
And so that's why there's a lot of in my opinion I believe there's a lot of that's why there's a lot of violent language in the Quran, is because that's what they were used to. Like, violence against each other was.
There's two separate parts. There's two separate there's two separate books, if you will, to the Quran. There's the writings that Muhammad did originally, which were his early teachings were during a time of peace, so they're very inclusive and peaceful, and it's all about the internal struggle with that and bettering yourself and loving your fellow man. And then his later writings were when he became a warlord and that's where you get all the very stern, sort of harsh, teachings and lessons is from that side of things. And there's a very clear, within Islam, there's no confusion as to what you follow when those two teachings contrast each other. You always follow the later teachings.
Yeah,
that's what I understand.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that throughout the Quran, it does contradict itself quite a bit.
Right, because he was a young man who was like peace and love, and then somewhere along the way he picked up the
It's
sword
like,
and
just
was
kidding.
like,
Let's just destroy our enemies.
Wow.
Why love our enemies when we can destroy them?
And somebody along the way was like, hey, you know what? The stuff you're saying now is in complete contradiction to what you said all those years back. Yeah, what I'm saying now is follow that. Okay.
It's almost like the Bible. It's almost like the Bible in reverse. Like you go from the New Testament where Jesus is like, okay, I fulfilled the old law. Now let's, move on from the eye for an eye type of thing. And then you're like, you know what? Let's go back to the eye for an eye thing.
Let's go back to this really strict rules.
Yeah, it's pretty scary, is what it is. So, but yeah, so that's I think we've touched enough on the topic of religion. I'm gonna move on, if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
To our next topic. Nicole, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Girl, you are on deck. So before you get started, though, let me say, Nicole and Adam LaHood, from what I understand, is also invested in this next topic. And Joel,
too. Yeah. And Adam Bates probably knows about it too. I mean, since it's happening here in Texas, I think we've all seen a lot about the story. Nicole
was the first one to bring it to the group in chat. No. I have purposefully stayed away from learning anything about this story so that I can be all types of excited to hear Nicole tell it to me. So, Nicole, I give you the floor. Tell us about Houston.
Hey, I'll start off by giving Joel credit for actually...
Excited with my dick, Weston. My dick. Sorry, continue. I apologize.
Anyway, so Houston, this all started with a phone call by a lady who called and she was concerned that her daughter was in a house and using heroin, and she said there were drugs and guns in the house. And so a couple of police officers went by this house to respond to the call, and they claim that while they were responding to the call, they heard some passerbys refer to the house as the dope house. I mean, there's no way to confirm that, but they claim it. And so that led a narcotics officer to supposedly use a CI to make a controlled buy. And so this guy, I think Goins, I think that's how you say his name, the narcotic officer, he went to the house with his CI, and he says that he made a controlled buy, and the CI claimed he apparently brought brown powder back to the office that the officer identified as black tar heroin. And the CI claimed that within the house, he saw many, many bags of heroin and I think it was a 9mm semi-automatic as well. So then they use this CI info to obtain a no-knock warrant, and they perform a drug raid. So they go in, and it's a married couple. I think they're married. It's a married couple who live there with their dog. The cops bust in on their no-knock warrant, and they shoot the dog. And I mean, I can't even imagine the panic and confusion of someone busting down my door. Right?
Like that's standard police procedure at this point. First thing you do when you get to a house is you look for a dog so you can shoot it.
Yeah. And so anyway, because it's no-knock warrant, someone just has busted down their door and shot their dog. The man responds by picking up his gun and shooting the officer, and his wife then tries to take control of the officer's weapon, same officer, and another cop comes in, shoots her dead, and at that point the husband opens fire on all the police that are there, and he ended up injuring 5 of them before he was himself then shot dead. Okay, so these people, they're dead now.
Wow.
The lady who called in and got all this started is the mother of the dead lady. And it is all coming to light now that this was fucking bullshit. That there was No fucking CI. They have gone to every informant that the
What?
CI has. Yeah, there's no informant. Fucking made up. And also, when they finished the raid, there was no heroin at all in the house. There was small personal use amounts of cocaine and marijuana, and that's it. There was no sign of any drug dealing, any other drugs. And this CI does not.
So this all started because who was it, the mother of the woman who lived in the house?
Apparently they finally interviewed someone interviewed her, and the lady was just saying that she was just worried about her daughter because she thought her daughter was using drugs in her own house, and I guess she thought the cops could help with that, and it fucking escalated from there. And I don't know what the thinking or motivation was behind this narcotics officer who now obviously lied about there probably ever being a CI. And this warrant was obtained on complete, falsities. It was completely made up, and these people are fucking dead.
Whoa. Why did okay. Why did the mother, did the mother have what was she calling out of genuine concern for her daughter, or was she calling out of spite?
We have no clue. I have no clue.
Okay, so there's no clarification on that. Are we even sure that there was an actual, has that been confirmed? Did that call actually take place?
Yeah, the lady actually did call the cops. But she didn't. They even apparently lied about the phone call, saying that someone called in and wanted to remain anonymous and wouldn't give her name because she was worried about being killed by the drug dealers that lived there. And the mother says that no, she called because she was concerned about her daughter using drugs in the house, in her own home. So, I mean, it seems it's suspicious. It looks spiteful from the mom doing that. If she knows her daughter's just, occasionally using drugs and she calls the fucking cops on them. But the real problem is this narcotics officer who apparently made up a CI and completely.
What the fuck?
Yeah. But I think there's a little bit of good that has come out of this entire clusterfuck. Is Art Acevedo, the police chief there in Houston, is now going to be severely limiting the number of no-knock warrants that will be occurring. They will be in more extreme cases and only under his approval, which
I would love there to be no-knock raids. This isn't the first time I've heard of a no-knock raid ending in this kind of debacle where I've heard of them accidentally, hitting the wrong house.
Yeah.
And then the guy mistakes the police for intruders and shoots them or shoots at them, and then he goes to court for assaulting officers. How does that make sense? You got the wrong fucking house. You shot at a guy, he shoots back. He thinks that you're intruders because you deliberately did not announce yourselves. There should be no situation where you don't announce yourself as law enforcement. I don't understand
I think
the need for no-knocks.
The police chief put it a good way. He said that it's usually expressed that no-knock warrants are needed, especially in drug raids, so that people don't have time to flush all the evidence. And he made a good point. He said if people are having enough time to flush all their evidence, when you do, what's it called? When you do a regular warrant, then there's obviously not much of a case anyway. If they had time to flush all your fucking evidence, they're not needed.
I'm not seeing enough of a payoff when you're risking this kind of when this is the risk that you take. I don't see the risk versus reward being worth it on this. You're talking about innocent people. There weren't any drugs. You had cops lying about a CI. Who knows why I'm still I'm still stuck on why the fuck, mom, did you? I'd love to know how mom feels about this whole thing. Like, yeah, are you happy with this? Your fucking daughter is dead because you decided to call. Like that. If you aren't, traumatized and guilt ridden for the rest of your fucking life, then you're a monster. First of all, like, why the fuck did you call, Mom? And then why are you lying about CIs? What the fuck's going on in Houston? Like, why is this the behavior? What's going on?
Yeah, and this is gonna fuck the Houston police pretty good, because since they now know that he made up this CI, they're gonna have to go back through every case he's done, and all the lawyers for anybody he was one who said had a buy or whatever will be appealed and almost automatically, overturned, because nothing he said in any past court case it's automatic be appealed. Yeah, it's fucked. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm still I'm just mulling it all over. I'm absorbing it all. Like, that's some fucked up shit. Adam LaHood, do you have anything to say about any of this? Oh, I guess he's not with us.
If he bothers unmuting himself.
He's muted himself, so he may be busy. Calls late at night. Or Discord problems.
Okay.
No,
he was server muted.
Third Adam says...
his mic isn't working. There it is.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I guess
I would love to hear what
you
have to say about this. He could give a legal perspective on this. Which
I will say that Acevedo, now the police chief, he used to actually be the police chief at Austin until last year when Houston came and poached him. And he was as police chiefs go, he was pretty decent. But when this thing first came out, he was all gung ho and, man, we got to do more about criminals with guns. Of course, they've never had a conviction for anything, so they weren't criminals. And, just being all rah and thin blue line and, our boys and brave boys in blue. And it's like, oh, no, you fucked up. And now he's seriously backtracking. So he's eating his words big time on this.
Yeah.
See, this is and this is a curious thing to me. I have a sort of my perspective on law enforcement has undergone over the last 10 years a drastic change. I used to be very anti-police, say 2010, 2012, in that general vicinity. At the time, there was a lot of before I get into any of that, Heathen's saying that there's parts of the story that are missing. Heathen, if you would like to be unmuted,
I'm gonna go and unmute him.
Yeah, if you'd like to be unmuted and let us know what you think is missing,
right.
If you'd like to join us on this part of on this conversation, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
So, can y'all hear me on this end or no?
Fuck yeah, man!
Right, there we go. I don't know. I fucking hate Discord. It's we'll see if it keeps working. So, Nicole, you said a few things earlier. I'll point out a couple of things. The officer that wrote the warrant is still in the hospital. He's in ICU. He has a shattered jaw because apparently he got shot. And his wired shut. So his attorney has come forward and said, I guess the attorney, let's wait to hear what he says. And there is something to be said for that. I've seen it happen because I've filed, I've gone through and, it's like, oh, holy shit, this affidavit's wrong, where they actually did write a proper affidavit and everything else like that. And then it just turns out it's a clerical error and they fucking swapped them because somebody down the line. So there's a slim possibility that he has an explanation for this. It's also bad because he basically has had 2 weeks to get a story straight because they're not talking to him. He's still I think he's out of ICU, but he's still in the hospital. And, they're not going to do shit with him until he's out of there. So that's number one. The other thing that,
wait.
that they're getting.
Adam, are you saying that there's possibly an explanation for all of this?
It's possible, or I'll say this, it's possible he generates an explanation.
Okay.
But the point is, we haven't heard from him yet. So, I'll give a semblance of a benefit of the doubt, like I did with Jussie. I suspected he was full of shit from the outset, but I was like, okay, let it play out and see what happens. No knock warrants aren't going to go away. I mean, this Texas Supreme Court and U.S. Supreme Court have both ruled that, yeah, you can do them, you can do them, you can do them. The bigger issue I had on this, and this is something I haven't seen in the public eye, is that a lot of people don't know this. A municipal court judge can sign off on a felony raid search warrant. I don't know what that means. A municipal judge handles fucking speeding tickets, parking tickets, stuff like that. You know, if you ever got a ticket, you either went to a justice of the peace or a municipal court. It's the lowest level court. They don't do shit. But they are allowed under Texas law to sign off. Any judge in good standing in the state of Texas can sign off on a search warrant. It's a problem because you have, here's the other thing. Municipal judges and JP judges in Texas, you don't have to have a law degree. You don't have to be an attorney. They're just elected by and large from the people out there.
Whoa. There's judges that weren't ever attorneys?
Yeah. You don't have to have a law degree to be a judge in Texas.
Holy shit! Texas is a whole other world. What the fuck, Texas?
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yeah. So this is a problem, and you know, but that's the way the Code of Criminal Procedure is written. You know, and that's the way the law is written, and so that's not going to change. Now, as a matter of practice and practicality, like SAPD, they'll always go to a district judge, you know what I mean? And they'll get them to sign off. And most of our district judges are good. Now, I've seen Castro in person where he had the officer and they want him to sign and he's grilling the officer. And I've actually seen him say no, and he'll write on there, stamp it, denied. Like, no, I'm not going to sign this fucking search warrant. That's the way it should be because, you know, it takes very, very little. And once a warrant is signed and issued, it's next to impossible to challenge it after the fact. I mean, it almost just doesn't happen. And 95% of all warrants are just rubber stamped. I mean, you can say pretty much anything you fucking want, and the judge is going to sign off on it.
Wow.
Also concerned about this thing is, and Acevedo touched on this, you know, and then he didn't really backtrack. I don't think he was backtracking. I think the first guy just didn't say it very well, is that the officers didn't have body cameras on. You know, and you know, then he came out later and said, well, we want body cameras because it holds us accountable. We want that. But none of these guys in the Houston raid had body cameras. So whatever the fuck happened, we don't know. Lastly, he said something, again, I'm trying to keep up. I'll spend the last 20 minutes fucking around with this stupid Discord app. You're talking about the mom calling the police because she was concerned for her daughter. That much is verified. They have the 911 calls and everything. That's what's kind of led to it. I don't think the mom intended, you know, obviously for the police to come in there, but a lot of people call the police for a lot of stupid fucking reasons. I mean, they called for everything because the neighbor down the street is setting off, you know, firecrackers. You know, they call because somebody took their parking space because they don't know what the fuck else to do. They get a shit ton of calls every day and like, okay, yeah, great, and move on. So she called. I guarantee she didn't think that, you know, they're going to go in there and fucking kill, you know, her daughter, her son-in-law, and the family dog. What's interesting is this whole thing is, according to the police, they said that I think they shot him first. Then she went and tried to grab, I think, a shotgun of one of the officers. Got shot, or maybe she got it loose and everything else like that. But you are actually allowed to use self-defense against a police officer. And it's a very, very convoluted and mixed up statute. But the last assault and a peace officer case I tried, we actually won on self-defense. You know, the cop had a broken nose and he got the shit knocked out of him. We said, well, yeah, he kind of fucking had it coming. And the jury agreed and they actually acquitted. Which, yeah, and it doesn't happen very often. It's a very, very hard battle to win. So what's interesting on this one is, you know, there was a lead officer. There's 5 total, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't read the article in a while on it. That was the lead sergeant that wrote the shit and everything else like that. And you know, he went in there, you know, and then the other guys with him. I don't think that with him are necessarily going to be culpable. They were just, you know, part of the term, but they were just kind of following orders. But the lead officer, I think he's certainly going to face aggravated perjury. It's a 3rd-degree felony, 2 counts, 1 for each person. And then, in my opinion, he should face 2 counts of either murder or manslaughter, which would be 2 to 20 years. So right now, he's facing 2 to 10 years on each count. Hopefully,
counts. And the dog?
No, for the husband and wife. The dog's just a fucking misdemeanor. No one cares about the dog. I hate to say it. They're not going to fuck around with the dog.
I guess I missed that. So the husband got shot and killed too?
The husband and wife both got killed.
Holy shit.
2 people died.
No survivors.
So, yeah, you could technically charge it as capital murder because multiple persons died and seek the death penalty or life without parole, but I don't think they're going to do that. And I think
what did they find? They found like a little bit of coke or something?
Well, that's just it, though. They said they found. And again, I've been kind of busy the last week or two, but I read that one of the substances they test actually wasn't what they thought it was. They thought they found heroin or coke, and they're now saying, well, it may not have been cocaine. I think a field test tested positive, but field tests aren't admissible in court because they false positive just as often as they. Yeah. They're unreliable and they're completely inadmissible in court for a reason. Found some weed, which no one gives a shit about, and even if they did find coke, it was consistent with personal use.
Wow. So they got shot and killed for nothing. For nothing.
Well, yeah. Even if they had drugs, even if they basically got killed for possession, is what it comes down to.
Which I don't think. I mean, if it coincides with personal use, you're not talking about distribution. You're not talking about a drug dealer. You're talking about somebody who bought a little bit of coke. Maybe we don't even know if that's true. Yeah. And they were shot and killed. Jesus Christ! This is, oh man. So Joel and Nicole, you guys, I guess, dropped off for a little while. You couldn't hear anything, and so you backed out and came back in, and you got voice back. I think what you missed was the beginning of what Adam the Hood was talking about. What's that? Hello?
Yeah, I can
still here. Yeah, I didn't say anything.
Oh no, it sounded like Nicole said something.
No. We're muted.
Oh, okay.
By the way, I just posted in chat, but this was posted like 3 hours ago. It is confirmed that the letter that Jussie Smollett received, that he was involved in that as well. That was 100% confirmed.
Woo! You fucking lunatic! You're absolutely out of
By
your
the way,
God's
anybody
mind.
in chat, open that article and actually look at the letter. It's actually really funny knowing that it's fake. Because it's like a child's handwriting. But the idea that like either Jussie Smollett himself or somebody that Jussie Smollett paid basically faked their handwriting to look like a child and do a crude drawing of him getting shot is like really funny.
Why can't we hear?
Here, let me actually just copy and paste the picture because it's actually incredibly amazing.
Why can't we hear you, Joel and Nicole? Is it just a technical issue on your end?
Yeah, it's been messing up for me all night. I really hate Discord at times.
I know. I'm sorry, guys, and I would love to be on a different medium. I just don't know. I don't have one right now. Oh my God. That's the letter?
Yes. Isn't it amazing?
Holy shit!
It's the best.
What is he? What is he, 12? Okay.
The return address is MAGA. I just noticed that. Instead of the return address, it just says MAGA in crude.
Oh, I forgot.
Marker
that
writing.
he said that. He mentioned that. He mentioned that it said MAGA as the return address. Why did he look at the handwriting?
It's
look at the drawing.
Oh man, no, this
you can barely like I. It took me a moment to figure out like what is that? Oh, I guess that's a tree, and I guess that's somebody hanging from it. And
Weston says the magazine clipping letters
like
is straight out of a Nickelodeon show. Absolutely, yes. No, but like this, like the fact that he posed basically a 4-year-old's handwriting just goes to show exactly what he thinks that people on the other side of the political aisle are. Like,
yeah.
That, I mean, that is
his
impression.
All he succeeded in doing is framing himself and those like him.
He just made himself look so stupid. That's it. Honestly, this is so freaking funny.
We see you, because that's what you did. Like, we didn't do that. You fucking did that to yourself, nonetheless. My
the only people on the right who would write like that is Chris Christie. Weston is on fire tonight.
What the fuck was your motivation for making that letter? What did you think? Like, what did he want out of that?
He just wanted to make people on the other side look bad. That's really all it is.
And it didn't go anywhere. So he thought, well, I better
not
beat
thinking,
myself up.
What if I get caught? Then how does that
look? You just lynched yourself, bro.
You just lynched yourself.
That's like the who's that, DJ Khalid, who does that. Congratulations!
He's like, congratulations, you played yourself.
You lynched. Congratulations, you lynched yourself. That's fucking hilarious. I need a meme of that, of him. I've seen his meme before. I've seen that meme before. It's his face and it's where somebody changes it from played to lynch. I need that so badly. That's hilarious. Wow, dude. Okay, so I'm sad that Nicole and Joel, you didn't get to, that you're having technical issues and that you can't join us for the end of that conversation about everything that happened in Houston. To let you know, what you missed was that the beginning of what Adam was talking about, which was you've got the lead officer whose jaws is wired shut and everything.
Yeah, he's still in the hospital and he hadn't been able to speak.
Right. So
his name is Officer Goins, I think. Harold Goins. That's his name.
That's crazy, man. That's just crazy. Yeah. All right, so
he killed someone else about 22 years ago in another no-knock raid.
Oh shit! Yeah. So this is a pattern with this guy. He likes to shoot people.
Well, 2 times in 22 years.
Oh well, maybe it's not that big of a pattern. 2 times in 22 years.
Yeah.
All right. Never mind.
The biggest impact is going to be all his current cases that are kind of moving forward. In the past, unfortunately, hard to get. I'm sorry. It's going to be hard for them to get relief from the appellate courts because there is a presumption that whatever happened, especially on plea bargain cases, is that you waived your right to appeal. And like I said, about 90%, 95% of all cases end with a plea bargain. So people are going to be filing writs of habeas corpus and stuff to undo it. But really, very few of Goins' past cases are really going to come under heavy scrutiny. A voluntary review, and the DA may voluntarily move to dismiss or file on their own. That has happened in the past. But if they say, no, we're going to keep it, unfortunately, those people that got fucked by him in the past are probably screwed.
That's fucking crazy, dude.
Well, that's just the way the law is, unfortunately. Now, the ones moving forward, absolutely. Because I guarantee you, every attorney is checking their case files right now, figuring out which ones he's on, and they're basically going to delay until he's out of office. I mean, he's basically out of commission right now, and he just set everything for a motion to suppress, motion for trial, and it gets dismissed by default. Forward, they're going to have a lot of damage. Unfortunately, the people that have already been kind of hurt and fucked over by this guy, they might get some relief, but precedent would say otherwise. They're probably screwed, and they're probably not going to.
That is. I don't even know what to say about that. That's just all kinds of depressing, man. That whole situation is fucked.
Yeah, I mean, it happens every now and then. And was in Connecticut. They had the Cash for Kids scandal. What state was that one? Let's see here. You know what I'm talking about? It was actually a judge, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania juvenile court, a judge admitted that basically he was being paid to send these kids to these, youth camps or rehabilitation centers. And that one, because it was a judge, it's a little bit different. They appointed special counsel, like a law firm, and I don't know how many millions they spent. They spent months, almost a year, literally going through every case piece by piece, like with a fine-tooth comb, and then issued a report, like a 500-page report to the Commission on Judicial Clemency, or their equivalency for Pennsylvania. And that one, they said this guy was so fucking corrupt for so goddamn long that we can't even begin to unwind because it's just so intermingled. And that one, it's the only case I know of personally. They actually said, not only is everyone's conviction vacated and you're reversed, but we're going to offer your record free of charge. They basically undid everything this judge did for like the last 20 years that he was on the bench. Every single case without exception. And not a cop. Unfortunately, they say, well, it was one bad cop, but you had a competent prosecutor and you had a good judge and you had a good everything else. So suck it up, bucko. You're done.
Wow.
So
that's great, man. So we have another topic. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Adam.
Yeah, no, just noting next week we will be talking about the opioid epidemic. And Weston will be here and will speak about it then. We have decided in chat, so look forward to that. What are we talking about next right now?
So, Sativa, are you still with us?
Oh, yeah. The body modification thing.
Oh, yeah.
That thing.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So there's a whole industry scandal, as it were, with that. And Sativa has the scoop on that. So why don't you let us all know what's going on?
Okay, so I am actually currently grabbing a link to throw into the chat real quick. Okay. The really how do I put this? So the really sort of Reader's Digest version, because I know we are way, way, way late right now. The Reader's Digest version is that we're
not late.
It's okay. There's a body artist there's a body modification artist named Mac McCarthy in England. Now, this gentleman is known to many of his clients as Dr. Evil. Now, as a body modification artist, and you'll see him referenced as a piercer, as a tattoo artist, but by definition, he genuinely is an actual body modification artist because he basically offers every available body modification.
Right. Now, we're talking. This is crazy stuff. Like he'll make
not crazy stuff. It's heavy mods. And the reason I pause to stop you from calling it crazy stuff is because that's literally what is going to be part of the problem once this hits stateside.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just forgive me when I say crazy stuff, but all I really mean is like it's wild. Like it's pretty intense.
It is. So heavy mods.
You're having pieces of your body removed.
So heavy mods basically include a wide variety of modifications. The most commonly known, just like the public, the most commonly known heavy modifications, you're looking at tongue splitting or tongue bifurcation, ear pointing, and things like that. Now, McCarthy was charged formally with 6 counts of intentional bodily harm and grievous injury. Now,
right, he's doing nipple removals.
Yes. Now, of those 6 charges, they are basically split between tongue splitting, ear pointing, and nipple removal. Now, I would like to point out right off the fucking bat here that a lot of times when we see cases on heavy mods ending up in court, it's more often than not because somebody somewhere along the way had some sort of major complication with one of these modifications. So typically what we're seeing is where, somebody was getting their eyeballs tattooed, scleral tattoos, and all of a sudden...
You can have your eyeballs tattooed?
Yes, you can, and it is considered a heavy modification.
Does that fuck with your eyesight?
It's not supposed to. But where we're seeing these issues come in is where we have clients having difficulties. Now, there was a case in, I'd like to say it was Canada, just last year, very recently, that is Shim Sham. I will address that question in just a few minutes, and I'll even explain why I'm going to address that question in a few minutes, not right this second. Like I was saying, though, most often when we see cases like this going into court, it is because a client has suffered some kind of very serious issue as a direct result of said mod. Okay, like the case in Canada, where we had a young lady who literally ended up being blinded and potentially losing her eye. I never really heard the tail end of that, over basically an improperly done scleral tattoo. Okay, that's a reasonable reason for these things to end up in court. Now, in the case of McCarthy, that is not what happened. We do not have clients that are having issues. None of these have filed complaints. What happened was somebody had seen his portfolio online because, of course, it's 2019. Most artists in the modification industry, a lot of us don't keep physical portfolios anymore because by the time a client walks in, they've already seen us all over the internet. So what happened here was somebody saw his portfolio online, reported it to social media, which then got scooted up to the authorities. So here we have a man who is doing these heavy modifications, and the 6 charges, like I said, are spread between, and I don't know exactly what numbers of each, but I know that they did include a combination of tongue splitting, nipple removal, and ear pointing. To answer the obvious question that I know everyone's going to ask, why would you want your nipples removed?
Yes.
In literally 90% of the cases where you've got a modifier removing nipples, it is because a client has planned for themselves a very intricate or very large chest piece, and they basically want a clean slate to start it on. They want a clean
your canvas, because you can't tattoo over the nipple. Is that right?
You can to a degree, but obviously with texture and color changes, it's not going to hold the ink the same way. And so again, for a lot of people who are having this done, it's just they want a blank canvas. They want to start without having to have any consideration to what it's about, or to what is there outside of just skin. The nipples are actually the biggest reason, especially on a male form, why back pieces are such a big deal, because it is basically the largest uninterrupted space for this.
Pardon me.
So by removing the nipple, we have now made twice that much real estate for a huge cohesive piece to happen on.
Right.
So
there's in the video that you shared with us in chat, there was a different reason. That there was a guy who was talking about how he had his nipple removed, and it was for a totally different reason, though, wasn't it?
Yes, he had them pierced when he was a lot younger and had eventually stretched them up to 6 millimeters thick, and the scarring was just unsightly and probably uncomfortable at that point as well. So he opted to have them removed. And here's the thing: all of McCarthy's clients are raving about, no, he's wonderful, he really, all of the, he did a consultation, he made sure why I wanted this, he walked me through everything. None of his clients are upset. Literally none of them.
No. In fact, the guy who had his nipples removed because of the scar tissue and everything, I remember him mentioning that he went to doctors and other places trying to get them to help him with his situation, and none of them, they all refused to help him. Like, nobody would remove his nipples for him. So in essence, this guy, Cormac or McCarthy, what's his name?
McCarthy,
was the only place this poor guy could turn to, and he was so excited and he was thrilled that he finally got done what he wanted done. He got his nipples removed, and he feels less self-conscious. So this guy's providing a real service in some cases.
Correct. Now, here's the thing. I actually personally, a while back, started calling around to see about ear pointing, because I would like to have my ears pointed. Now, ear pointing and ear shaping are slightly different things, but the long and the short of it is this takes our very rounded ears and makes them pointed like an elf or a Vulcan or what have you. Now, part of what this entails in most cases is cutting a small triangle out of the cartilage and then stitching it back together in such a way that it forms that point. Now, that being said, this obviously sounds very much like a surgical procedure since we're cutting and stitching, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem. Plastic surgeons do not offer this service. And literally, when I was calling around in about a 200-mile radius, you know what I got told? We do not offer that because it is unnecessary. Well, Karen, so are triple Ds. But you're pushing those out every goddamn day. So here's the thing. The heavy mods where he is at, and in most places in the world, are in what can affectionately be referred to as a legal gray area. It is not stated anywhere that we cannot do this, but it's not stated anywhere that we can. Now, one of the big differences with having a modifier do these sorts of things, even if a plastic surgeon was willing to do this, basically what it comes down to is in most places, it is illegal for modifiers to use any kind of numbing agents. So you also need to be aware that the people who are willingly going through these procedures are willingly doing it with absolutely no assistance with the pain. They are sitting in that chair, they are sitting dead ass still, and they're dealing with every little goddamn bit of it. Now, that said, part of the issue here is when this got dragged through court, because this whole thing with McCarthy has been going on since 2017.
Now,
he walked in with
UK, is that correct?
Yes. Now, we are, the other thing too is that when he got dragged into court, now we as modifiers, we use release forms. Everything in life, because everything is so goddamn litigious anymore, we have to do release forms on every modification that we do. So he took to court all of his release forms saying, look, I have consent. These people were of sound mind and body. You know, this is something that they sought me out for. Now, mind you, the way that they are writing all these articles and even some of the court documents I've seen, they make it sound like this guy is literally running around the place, just pegging civilians, knocking them over, pinning them down and cutting their tongue in half. These are consensual things that are happening. When he took that information to court, he literally got told consent is not an adequate defense. So that brings to light for me a lot of the bigger issues. Now, the first one that I have with this is a slippery fucking slope because they are going to say that they are trying to quote unquote regulate and put a stop to this out of the interest of public safety. I will explain to you why that is not how that works. So what's going to happen is if they continue to shut down shops and put good modifiers out of business, all they're doing is pushing it underground. All they're doing is pushing it underground. Now, in my opinion, there are three basic categories of piercers specifically on this topic. There are the ones that say, no, this is a medical procedure. This is out of our pay grade. We need to not be touching any of this. The second type are the ones that say, okay, yeah, this is probably a little bit above our pay grade, but no one else offers this, and we know that clients are going to look somewhere for it. So we believe that the ones of us who are capable of doing these things as safely as we can do them under our current guidelines should be trying to offer these things because they're going to do it anyway. And then there's the third section, which are the underground crew, the hacks that don't have a license to fucking protect, who see a cornered fucking market. Or then you've got your clients that are going to be standing in the front of the goddamn mirror in the bathroom with an X-Acto knife trying to split their tongue or cut off their fucking nipples. Now, I don't know. Now, here's the thing. I agree. Yes. Should it be fucking regulated? Abso-goddamn-lutely. However, taking it out of just completely out of the hands of places that are already regulated, like a studio and things like that, you're not stopping it from happening. You're stopping it from happening under a license. You're stopping it from happening in a clean establishment. You're stopping it from happening with proper fucking tools and sterility. Now, that said, the biggest issue here that I have is the entire Western civilization is built up on this pinnacle of bodily autonomy. So you're telling me that I cannot, of sound mind and body, walk in and ask somebody to please cut my tongue in half? That's a fucking problem. That's a big fucking problem.
I agree. This is something that needs to be regulated. It needs to be allowed so that we can have people who are capable of doing this safely, like you're talking about,
aren't in fear of legal prosecution for doing something that these people are going to get it done anyway.
I mean, and that's it. At what point, why doesn't consent matter? And here's the other thing too. It's a slippery slope because, today it's okay. No one is permitted to do tongue splitting. Tomorrow it's, well, nobody's allowed to stretch their ears past a certain width. And the next day after that, it's nostrils, because there are people who, things that, you are looking at like tongue splitting or nipple removal, like, oh my God, are you kidding me? They look at that the exact same way as a nostril piercing. It's all bad. It's all disgusting. It's all unnatural and abhorrent.
Right.
So the problem is that's a really, really shitty slippery slope. It truly is. Most of the modifiers who are doing these things are licensed and are trained by one another through apprenticeships. The best way that we as an industry know how to do this. Now, that said, I think it would be less of an issue if any true medical professionals offered these services, but they don't. Here in 2019, here's the thing. Nobody bats an eyelash if somebody wants to go have gender reassignment surgery. How dare you cut off your nipple, though? Are you fucking kidding me?
But not your nipples.
So it's considered completely acceptable to go and, alter, or honestly, depending on how you look at it, mutilate your fucking genitals under a doctor.
Right.
But if you just, because you want a clean canvas for a tattoo, you can't remove your nipple, or you can't cut your tongue in half, or you can't point out your ears. But millions of people annually are going and getting completely elective cosmetic procedures, and that's okay. But these things are not. And that's not just public opinion. That's literally the doctors will tell you, no, I won't cut your tongue in half. That's ridiculous. No, I won't point your ears. That's unnecessary. Well, so are fillers, but here we are doing it. And the other thing too, like I said, it's the removal of bodily autonomy. That is a big problem for me. Huge problem for me. Monstrous. And it should be a problem for everybody. Because here's the thing. The other problem is that, in this argument, the only people that are really trying to lobby for, let's get it regulated so that modifiers can offer these services are modifiers and our clients. Now, the problem is the higher ups, the people who actually genuinely have any kind of power, are not modified people. And they are not the people who understand why we're doing what we're doing. And ultimately, call it body dysmorphia if you want. I would like my ears to be pointy because I think it is an attractive look. Now, I say that and I'm fucking crazy, but if a woman says, I'm uncomfortable with how small my breasts are and I'd like to get them augmented, oh, honey, you do you. Self-care. Love yourself. There's no
it's completely hypocritical.
There is no fucking difference.
You make a very good point with the whole boob job thing. You're absolutely right.
My issue is just like the philosophical implications of this, because like the whole idea that consent between the patient and the operator or whatever, that doesn't matter.
The words you're looking for
flies in the face of every like foundation to Western civilization, meaning that our entire system is founded on the idea of property rights, specifically in this case, the idea that you own yourself. You own your labor, you own your life, you own your body. And if you consent to changing something about your body, that's within your rights. That is a fundamental human right.
Yes.
Right.
And
just to real quick, sorry to interrupt you, Best Adam, to touch on something that Third Adam said about infection. I'll tell you, the honest to God numbers on infection, true infection in body modification, are staggeringly low. It is such a truly rare occurrence to see a genuine infection in any kind of body modification. It is literally barely worth mentioning. And even then, the vast majority of that little tiny number that are actually infections are typically out of home shops, as we call them, kitchen wizards, or where you've got people just not handling their shit properly. If you go home with a beautiful piercing out of my shop that was done in a sterile environment, with all new tools and all everything. If you go home and roll around in your cat's litter box, that is not my fucking fault. So there's that. Sorry, Adam, carry on. I just wanted to touch base because the infection thing irritates the absolute ever-loving piss out of me, because at least 3 times a day I deal with clients, oh my God, this is infected. What do I do? That's not infected. It's irritated, because if it's actually infected, go to a doctor, get a swab, get your shit handled, because if it's an infection, I'm not allowed to touch it anymore.
Right. Here's the thing. I definitely think that this is something that should be legalized. This should not be considered, what would you call it?
It shouldn't be in gray area.
Or anything to that degree. People are going to do this. It's a lot like, and I see somebody throwing abortion around in chat, and I don't know what kind of correlation they're trying to make.
I think I misunderstood him. I think what he's trying to say is like that these people that are opposed to the body modifications are pro-choice by the rationale of the my body, my choice.
Right.
Which
now,
is
here's the
hypocritical. Like, if you're going to use that argument, which it's wrong in abortion, but that's kind of a separate issue.
Right.
But
I was just going to say, so fuck, now I've lost my what the point was. I totally missed it. Anyway,
well, and the other thing too, sorry to cut you off, Augie. The other thing too is McCarthy literally pushed this all the way up to the Supreme Court, where he was basically told, tough tits, you're not getting an appeal, take your hits. Now, because of course, there's no argument that he did these things. He performed these services for these clients. He had no choice. He had to plead guilty. So not only did this man have his livelihood yanked out from under him for something that is not expressly illegal in the first fucking place, I'd like to point that out. Again, gray area, but it is not expressly illegal. Okay? Not only did this man have his entire livelihood, his life's work, chucked out from under him, now he's facing prison time. This man with a new baby at home and a family that he's had to find different ways to support now is looking at fucking prison time for consensually modifying somebody else's body. Mind you, in this world where you can go to Walmart or go to fucking Claire's and get your gun piercings that are filthy on fucking carpet by a teenager with a week's worth of training. And I'll tell you, the vast majority of true infections from piercings come out of Walmart and fucking Claire's. So yes, obviously the modifiers, we're the fucking problem.
Right.
Yeah, because the people that are doing these kind of modifications, these kind of like really intense, kind of operations, like these are the people like you that really know their stuff. Like they've been working with the human body for years.
Yes.
Why else would you be comfortable doing an operation like this?
Correct. And here's the thing: we use medical fucking supplies. Here's the thing.
Yeah, you do.
Literally, 50 feet away from me right now.
Pride in your work.
Yeah, I literally 50 feet away from me right now sits a fucking Ritter M9 Ultraclave. It's an ungodly process to sterilize my fucking tools. The other thing too that I think is worth noting is that are you good, Augie?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was reading I'm sorry. I was reading chat.
Oh, okay. God damn it! Now I lost my fucking train of thought. But I mean that's it. We're not sitting over here, soaking things in fucking alcohol and calling them clean. These are people who have, very expansive knowledge of human anatomy and what we're doing. And ultimately, I think that if it were regulated, they would be ahead to regulate, because here's the thing, that would mean better training for the body modification artists that are doing this. That would mean safer environments and safer procedures for our clients. Ultimately, either plastics need to step up their game and start offering these things, or they need to give modifiers a way to do it. Additionally, the amount of crossover between the medical and modification community right now is at an all-time high. There are so many piercers who have a medical background, who are doctors, who are RNs, and a lot of times you've got these people who, they've stepped away from the medical industry and now they're in the piercing industry, or they have close ties and they're communicating back and forth with one another. And I think that now is a really great time that we should be taking advantage of that. I could even see, because there's like in aesthetics, there's certain types of like chemical peels and things like that, skin services that have to be done under the watchful eye of a nurse practitioner or a registered nurse or something like that. Some kind of medical professional needs to be on site. I would even be willing to accept regulation with, okay, you have to have somebody with legitimate medical training on site to do these procedures. Why aren't we looking at that? Why are we putting a man in fucking prison for doing his fucking job with happy, healthy fucking clients with beautiful, spectacular modifications done to them? We'll accept we'll accept body dysmorphia in the form of transgenderism, but we can't point our fucking ears? Are you shitting me?
Or even just like boob jobs. Like, political implications of transgenderism aside.
Yeah.
Let's really compare apples to apples and
yeah, it's a boob job.
Boob job, Botox, stuff like that. Like tummy tucks.
Well,
there's so many cosmetic surgeries that people get all the time. Why should this be any different? Like, from a legal perspective. The only difference is the clientele are different kinds of people.
Yes.
That people tend to judge differently. And no, that screw that. Like, from a legal perspective, there is no reason why they should be judged differently just because of they typically have different demographics. One demographic I respect and one I don't.
Yes.
Okay, I don't care which one you respect. They're the same. Like, they're both cosmetic surgeries.
Yeah, it is the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
One of them you agree with and one of them you don't. But
and I saw mentioned in chats, people were talking about how anesthesia is not offered at these shops. And there's a good reason for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Anesthesia is not something you just toy with. Like, not anybody can just you can't learn how to give anesthetics on YouTube.
And here's the thing too.
You can fuck shit up. People can die if you try and give somebody anesthesia and you don't know what the fuck you're doing. So for a small shop where minor little alterations to body modifications are being done, it wouldn't make sense to have an actual licensed anesthesiologist at the shop.
Anesthesiologist.
I think
words are hard.
No, is that not proper? Anesthetician?
Anesthesiologist.
No, that's not proper. Anesthesiologist is the term you're looking for. The other thing too is that honestly, something that could help a lot of these and I'm going to tell you, a lot of the heavy mod artists out there, while they are not permitted legally to use any kind of even local anesthetic, I'm talking they can't even rub a cream on in most places that will take the edge off this shit, much less something that would actually be incredibly helpful like injectable lidocaine. Okay, here's my thing. I think that if it is a modification that somebody can sit through with no painkillers, I don't think that really that should be considered a surgical thing at that point. Because if you can sit through it and not pass out or choke to death on your own fucking puke, it to me doesn't seem like it is so fucking heavy that a good body modification artist cannot be trained to do it safely. And that's it. Like, ultimately, I feel like now I've always had a very strong no numbing stance. Even if I were legally permitted to, fuck that shit. Man up, handle your business. Half of getting it is sitting through it. Half of having any kind of modification is getting the modification done. Yes, exactly. And for some people, that's what they look for. That's part of the ritual for them. And I'll tell you, I've pierced some pretty fucked up shit, and I've never pierced anything so bad that I was like, ooh, I should have numbed that. I literally never. And ultimately, it slays me that they're going to put this through under the guise of public safety, but ultimately, that's the exact opposite of what is going to happen. And, and a lot of people are kind of sweeping it under the rug like, oh, it's not that important. It is very important because it sets a legal precedence, which means we're going to have people out there fucking each other up, giving each other gonosipha blades with dirty fucking tools, or just pushing it underground. Additionally, we have amazing body modification artists whose careers are fucking over. McCarthy, he's facing fucking prison time. That man's career is done. He's done.
Yeah, we need to not follow suit with how the UK is dealing with this.
And like I said, it's a scary fucking thing. It really, for somebody in the industry, it is terrifying. Because yes, I have done tongue splitting. I have taken a client's tongue in my hand and cut it in half with a scalpel. Now, in my area, here's the thing. I'm currently working at changing some of the legislation and rules and things like that in my specific area. We are permitted now to do scarification and skin removal because I changed that. I made that legal in the state of Wyoming. I personally, directly made that legal in the state of Wyoming because I wanted to be able to do scarification and branding without worrying about legal gray area. Now, that said, here's the thing. Not everybody has that opportunity, and not everybody will listen to artists in their area. I had to go, literally, the paperwork I turned in to the health department to present them with permitting me, because previously, because we had to amend not only the body modification regulations here, we actually had to amend the medical regulations here for that, because medical regulations override body art regulations. So we literally had to go in and change medical regulations in Laramie County, Wyoming, to make this happen.
Oh, wow.
You can only imagine the kind of presentation I had to pull for that. Literally about 30 solid pages of an essay on what exactly is scarification, exactly how deep does it go, what layers of skin am I dealing with, how much bleeding is present, what are the risks, the whole fucking nine. It took me damn near a year to put together everything I needed to walk into that office knowing, okay, there's a chance they'll fucking listen. They did it. It worked. We did it. But that was just in Cheyenne, fucking Wyoming. Thank you.
That's really impressive.
And that's it. And I'm actually getting ready to go after more of our regulations and change those. And now, unfortunately, I don't have a year to sit there. Now I don't have a year to sit there and put my shit together. I pretty much have to hit the ground running, because with that just hitting seriously international news, the fucking timer is on. And now I basically have to try to get ahead of this, at least here where I am locally, to try to set some precedent to the opposite, so that if they decide, fuck this, we're shutting all heavy mods down. Because the biggest thing with scarification is I needed to be able to legally possess and use a scalpel. That was the biggest thing stopping it, because it wasn't outright stated you cannot perform scarification, but it was stated that we were not permitted to use scalpels. That was what I had to go after. And that's the kind of intricacy that you really have to pay attention to when you're working on this shit is, you really have to focus on every little tiny fucking detail about, it's not just, you can't just look at the whole picture and go, oh, I want to do scarification. You have to backtrack, because the people here are not going to fucking pay attention to that. The people in the charge of our body art department of the health department, basically they'll just kind of write it in and call it a day. Now the problem is that ever comes up into court, they're going to nail me on the medical stuff. So that's why I literally have to sit down and do all of my homework. I am probably better versed on Wyoming medical legislation than half the fucking doctors in this shithole. Because I'll tell you, I don't know a single doctor here in town who sees a doctor here in town, if you're smelling what I'm selling.
Right.
So yeah, and people don't realize, and people without modifications and people who are not into heavy modifications, because I'm going to sell my husband down the river here real quick. I was talking to him earlier, and his response was, why the fuck would anybody want to cut off their nipple? And I was like, that's a reasonable question and all. However, please understand that that attitude is what's going to fuck us here, because ew, that's too far. Everybody has a different line. Now, would I ever personally cut off my own nipple? Can't see a reason I would, but that doesn't mean that it's my place to make that choice for a client. If you are not comfortable offering a modification for any reason, don't offer it. But I think that the right to choose to have these modifications done should be placed within the hands of the people, hands of the clients. And in the absence of a surgeon or a medical professional that will willingly do these procedures for them, they are going to seek out other methods. The first obvious one is a body modification artist, because with a body modification artist, you're probably looking at a whole lot less judgment and a whole lot less, okay, let's sit down, do our consultation, schedule you out a few weeks, and go.
Right. It definitely is something that should be regulated in order to make sure that those doing it are legitimate and capable. But yeah, it should be allowed. Do you know? We talked a lot about what's going on with McCarthy and what's going on in the UK courts with this whole with body modification. What about here at home? Have you done any research? Do you know what the score is here legally? I mean, I know you've done your homework, like you were talking about in Wyoming, and you adjusted things there. But what about on a larger scale?
Oh God, it is so different state to state. It's ridiculous. Like in Montana. In Montana, last I checked, there was no need for any kind of actual body artist license. There was literally, you need to have a business license so we can take your taxes. Even in Wyoming, and Wyoming is one of the more rigid places, unfortunately, which is horrifying to me, because here's the thing. If you come to Laramie County, Wyoming, if you have roughly $200 and can pass a background check, and when I say pass a background check, I mean don't have any active warrants on your head, you can have the same license I have. There is no prerequisite for training. There is no method. Yeah, there is no there's no burden of proof that you know what you're doing. There's nothing. In Colorado, all through Colorado, there are tattoo and piercing schools where you go, and I'm not shitting you, it's about 1 to 2 month program. Bam, now you're a licensed body modification artist. Now in Wyoming, too, one of the other things I'm going after is we have the same license for everything. I am a piercer. I am a body modification artist or a piercer, depending on which angle of my career you're looking at. Here's the thing. The tattoo artists that have no fucking business even piercing an ear carry the same license I do, which allows them to pierce genitals.
What the fuck?
Now, conversely, I can legally also tattoo, but in my opinion, you can fuck somebody up a whole lot worse and a whole lot faster with a shitty piercing than you can with a shitty tattoo.
Yeah, no
kidding. And I have to have more anatomical knowledge to properly pierce a fucking lip than a tattoo artist will have to have their entire fucking career. That is a fact. That is not debatable, not negotiable. That is a fucking fact. Recently, here about 6 months ago, we had a gal, not my client, mind you, who ended up in the ER because she went to a place with a person who pierces. I refuse to refer to this person as a piercer for obvious reasons. Hit the end of an artery in her lip, and she literally almost fucking bled to death. Not funny, haha. Almost died over a lip piercing.
Wow. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't, because I know how to do my job.
Before I make jokes, I just want to say that's horrible, and I'm glad she's okay. But what a fucked up way that would have been to go. How'd Karen die? She bled to death from her lip.
So fucking the worst part of it is that when
she bled to death.
Yeah, so she went on Facebook and posted this whole thing about, well, this is what happened to me, guys, just, for everybody that's curious. First of all, she ended up going to the ER, right? So they cut out the lip ring because these medical professionals who are so much better than us body modifiers couldn't figure out how to open the fucking jewelry. So they had to cut it out. Not a joke, cut it out. Okay. And then when they stitched the inside of her lip, they didn't use the right kind of stitches. They used the kind of stitches that as they dry up, they fall out.
Oh.
That doesn't work on the inside of your fucking mouth.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so that's the level of competence I'm up against in the medical community here. It's fucking stellar. Also, when she went on Facebook and posted, "Oh guys, so that everybody knew I went to the hospital, like this is what we're doing, blah blah blah, like this is what happened." Literally, the first probably 10 comments on there that you would expect to be, "Oh my God, I'm glad you're okay." Literally, at least 8 of those said, "Jesus Christ, I told you to go to face." Not a joke.
Nice.
It was a riot.
That's pretty funny. Wow.
Yep. So
I mean, that just really goes to show like how little licensing actually means. Like people, like everyone loves to think like, oh, if you're licensed, that must mean you know what you're doing. No, it just means some bureaucrat signed off on you. That is entirely different. Like,
it means you're paying
sometimes
taxes.
those things are correlated, but a lot of times they're not, because bureaucrats don't tend to be experts in the fields that they're regulating. Especially for something as obscure as body modifications.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that's it. On one hand, I would like to see some of the regulation dropped so that we can just do our fucking job. But to protect our clients, I'm willing to subject myself to more regulation so that, I'm not having to deal with these fuck up cases. I can't tell you how many pieces of jewelry I've had to dig out of a client because a tattoo artist, well, the piercer already left for the night, but it's just a lip or it's just this. And 2 days later, they're into me because I've got to dig into their skin and find the goddamn thing because they put a fucking 1/4 inch flat back into a lip.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
regulations like when they're actually when there's actually a need for them, basically you have to demonstrate, okay, are there externalities as there are, and will this regulation help alleviate those externalities? Sure. I'm actually all in favor of that. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, all regulations are inherently bad. But the problem is most of these regulations are just like, they're just well-intentioned, but they're not actually effective, and it's just another hoop for people to jump through. And that's wrong.
Weston, I firmly get the impression that you would shit your pants within 2 hours at my day job, homie. Just looking at chat, he's over here like, ew, dig into a person to find jewelry. I'm like, yeah. Have you ever had somebody
that's like a regular
bite
thing
your
for
fucking
you.
hand hard enough to literally break through your glove and break skin, and now you've got your blood and their blood in their mouth, and your hand is bleeding, and you have to take a couple weeks off work because you can't fucking hold a needle anymore. Stabbing people and digging in people, I feel like most people think are two different things. Oh my goodness. But so there's my big thing on why, yes, even people who are not modified or who do not appreciate or even agree with the fact that people want to get these things done should damn well be concerned about the McCarthy case, because it sets an ugly precedence, not only for our freedom as modification artists, but in terms of your autonomy. Because realistically, as outlandish and tinfoil hat-tacular as it sounds, I mean, while it's a good several steps away from, okay, well, you don't meet our criteria, so we are going to sterilize you before you turn reproductive, that's a good few steps away, but it's on the same goddamn road.
Right.
And that's not debatable in my mind at all. Everyone should be concerned with it.
Daggerfella, and correct me if I'm wrong, Daggerfella says regulation kills small businesses and helps large businesses grow because they can afford the costs. I'm not anti-regulation because I think it helps to streamline everything and make everything uniform. But I think there's a difference between regulation and taxation and fees. You can have regulation without having to charge for all these different regulation things. So I don't think it's the regulation part that's killing small businesses. Just my personal opinion.
Well, I guess you correct me if I'm wrong on this, Face. Like, you have to hire someone to, or it's like somebody in your business has to know what the regulations are and then kind of make sure that you're complying with those, and that costs money. And in a small business, that money is a lot more tight than in a big business, I think, is kind of the gist of that.
Yeah.
I can agree.
So it's true to an extent, not just with like taxes and fees, but with regulations as well. Like any needless hoop that a business has to jump through is going to disproportionately hurt small businesses, whether that's a financial hoop or just a time hoop, because man hours cost money. So
I think, and I agree with you. I think less regulation, or how should I put this? A minimal amount of regulation. Just enough to keep things on the up and up. But
I'm going to go ahead and mute Heathen.
Okay. I was wondering who that was. So
yeah.
I think a minimal amount is good, is necessary. I do agree that it can get out of hand, and has, and is evident today. And I think we need to. I definitely think the balance needs to be struck. If that's a fair assessment.
I think so. And I, as a small business owner in a kind of niche industry, realistically, my biggest concern in terms of let's get regulation going, it's literally for the safety of our clients.
Right.
And
regulation in regards to safety, I'm all for.
Yeah,
if
it's actually warranted. Like, I mean, because you were saying, like, weren't you saying like a while back how there were some regulations that just made no sense whatsoever?
Mm-hmm.
Like, could you give those examples? Like, because I kind of forget what specifically they were.
You're good. So the first one that comes to mind immediately, because it's fucking obnoxious. A lot of artists, especially tattoo artists, tattooists more than piercers, but a lot of tattoo artists especially, they're going all disposable, meaning that, they're done with the days of sitting in a sink and scrubbing their tubes and tips and all that stuff and their grips, and they're done with dumping them into an enzyme bath overnight and all that, and then running them through the autoclave. They're completely disposable. So they're using plastic things or cheap enough metal things that they're throwing them out after every client. And where I'm at, those shops are still required to have an autoclave, and they are still required to do a monthly spore test on that autoclave to prove that it's working properly. Why? They're not reusing anything, so they're not sterilizing anything. So why the fuck do they have to have an autoclave?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I mean, the state doesn't make any extra money off of us buying a $5,000 fucking autoclave. So why the fuck do they care?
Yeah.
Frankly, it's a tax write-off. You'd think that they would not want us buying huge fucking equipment we don't need.
But that's kind of the kind of stuff that, just really needs to go.
And that's it. I mean, that's a rule just for the sake of having a fucking rule. Now, back in the day, before disposable gear was on the radar or really a thing, it's reasonable to me that yes, we should have to have autoclaves. But the place where I guest spot every Wednesday, that the two artists that are in there right now, they use everything disposable. She still has to sit there and run a goddamn spore test every month for this fucking very expensive paperweight that she has in one of her rooms, because them's the rules. It's accurate.
Right.
Now, mind you, it's still not even strictly stated in our guidelines that we cannot sterilize and reuse our needles.
What?
No shit.
Can you repeat that again? I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
So according to our regulations, it's not strictly forbidden to reuse your needles as long as you're sterilizing them properly. Quote unquote.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Let that sink in. They have to have an autoclave, but it's okay if you reuse your needles as long as you run them through that autoclave.
What the fuck? That's
never mind the fact that our needles are specifically designated as single use because eventually your bevel will start to wear away. Also, those are really tiny little hollow things, and unless you're telling me that you are literally getting in there with some kind of itty bitty little tiny pipe cleaner and gutting out anything that could possibly be inside of there, there's no sterilizing those. And no. I literally tell my clients as I am tearing apart my tray, because when I set up, I show them absolutely every little package that I'm opening. I explain what every tool is, where it's going to go when we're done. And when we're done, I pick all of them back up because I use insertion pins to help to put the jewelry in behind the needle that are the same basic size and shape of the needle. So I make it a point to really show my clients, look, this is your sharp. It is hollow. It is pointed. This is your pin. It is threaded and it is solid. Then I tell them this cannot be sterilized for reuse. This is going to go in the sharps container, never to be seen or heard from again. And then I show them the pin and tell them this will go to the DEFCON 2 container because this can be properly sterilized.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane that they say you can reuse needles. That's just absolutely insane.
Yeah. Yep.
So stupid. So stupid.
So yeah, that's the kind of shit that I'm fighting in my industry without even consideration to shit like the McCarthy case.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you bringing this topic to us and sharing all this with us. I really am glad that you were the one to do so, because you definitely are involved in the industry, so you have a firsthand knowledge of what's going on there. And hopefully like I said, hopefully we don't make the same mistakes the UK is right now.
Yeah. No, and like I said, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring it up, because like I said, I mean, not to have my tinfoil hat on, but this is something that should genuinely concern everyone. This is not just a modification issue. Anyone who appreciates being able to, call the shots for your own body should be concerned.
I can't understand anybody saying they don't agree that people should be allowed to do this.
And yet there they are doing it.
Going, no, I don't condone this. I don't think people should be allowed to do that. Like, who is that? Who's saying that?
The really authoritarian people.
I don't like
seriously.
it. You shouldn't be allowed to do it. So, and Daggerfella, yes,
I don't like it,
we
so
will have
it
to
should
discuss
be
free market
illegal.
politics at some point. Maybe next Tuesday we can do that. So we have run overtime, as we oftentimes typically do. So that is all the time that we have. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Really appreciate it, because without you guys, we wouldn't have a show. And of course, thank you to my co-hosts, because without you, I wouldn't have a show either. It'd just be probably me talking to people every once in a while. It wouldn't be nearly as structured, I don't think, or as fun. I would like to dedicate the show, as always, to Noah Valdez. We miss you. We love you.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody interested, there's a live stream of this show. I think at least the first 2 hours, that is available on YouTube. And then Adam, you will have
I'll have the recording,
the full recording, and we'll get that posted on YouTube as well. Thank you again to everyone. We'll see you next time. For now, good night and go home.